Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 19th, 2023 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on a smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel TV, now Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to give you guys a rundown of tonight's agenda. We have a relatively long list, and I just want to tee it up appropriately. So we're going to kick off the evening with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees meeting. Then we will adjourn that meeting, getting into our regular select board meeting, where we have two sets of minutes. We will then go into public announcements and agenda item request. We have a public hearing on a utility pole on Dusty Miller Lane. We will have our drinking water testing and pumping update from our DPW Director, Rob Faley. We will move into public comments on our business agenda, which consists of, and I want to note one thing. The first item on our business agenda is special town meeting follow-up discussion. During that item, I'm going to allow public comment from anyone during that item. Items 2 throughout will be for the board discussion during it, but if they're in the public announcement agenda item request segment E, the following will be open for comments. Consider use of town roads for the annual turkey trot. Consider Oktoberfest request sale of town property. Consider a special one-day alcohol license for Emma Bell's Cafe. Consider sales on town property for the South Chatham Public Library. Cape Public Health Collaborative Intermunicipal Agreement, Health Agent Giorgio's presentation. Consider the appointment of 2 alternate members of the Summer Residence Advisory Committee to full member status. Consider sending a request to the Finance Committee that they appoint its chair or his or her designee to serve as a liaison from the Finance Committee to the newly constructed trust of the constructed Board of Trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust. We have a ratification of the town manager's designation of Dan Tobin as an interim tree warden for a period of 2 years. And then we will wrap up our evening with an annual review of town board commissions and committees, lastly with the town manager's report. And for clarification, item 10, which is our annual review of town boards, commissions, committees, just to understand what that agenda is tonight. Annually, the board kind of goes through our committees, boards, and what have you, and kind of, reviews them, can make suggestions. Tonight's focus is going to be to go through each of our boards, commissions, identify anything of concern or any items we want to bring forward. We will then tally or make notes of those and then figure out our next steps. So it could be, we could have a short list, we could have a long list, and depending on what concerns or questions are brought up during the review, we will make a follow-up agenda item in the future weeks to address them. Theoretically, each item will have a different course of action depending on what is brought up. So this is a step 1 of a step 2 process, in my opinion. So with all that being said, we are going to convene the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. I'm going to do a roll call. Select Board Member Shell, are you online? He's not online. Select Board Member Dykens?
Present.
Select Board Member Davis?
Present.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Present.
Trustee Member Bean?
Bruce is here.
Trustee Member Megan Story is unable to attend, and Chair Corey Metters is present. With that being said, I will hand over the meeting to Gloria, I believe.
Sure, I'm happy to start. Can you hear me?
No.
Is that better?
Closer.
How's that?
Good.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First, I want to mention that Peter Flinker from Dodson and Flinker Landscape Architects is here. He'll be doing the primary presentation and working with you as we start talking about preferred development concepts for the Meeting House Road property in South Chatham and the former Buckley property on Main Street in West Chatham. This is part of our overall community engagement, just as a reminder of some of the things that we have been doing in this entire engagement process with the goal of understanding how the trust would like to see these two properties developed. We started with an initial community forum in December, which kind of laid the groundwork and explained the properties. We had a second community forum in February with the presentation of some initial development concepts for each site, some with 25 units, some with 50 units, just to give you an idea of the range. We did a community housing survey, which got an astounding number of responses, and did a presentation on the survey results in mid-April after the survey was open from mid-February to mid-March. At that April 11th meeting, the board very wisely, I would say, requested that the town put together and issue a request for information for the development of the properties so that they could better understand from the development community what makes the most sense from a development and financing perspective for these properties. We did that. We presented those results to the board at the August 15th meeting. And now where we are in the process is to take all of this information that we've accumulated, and I'm sure that you've been absorbing all along, kind of integrate it and come up with some ideas for how we can move forward with these properties. We have a couple of goals in mind. The first is to give feedback on building height, building type, density or number of units, site layout, ownership versus rental, AMI distribution, area median income distribution for what you'd like to see with respect to affordability on the site, and give that information to our consultants so that they can come up with, rather than 4 or 5 concept plans for the properties, just one for each so that we know where we're going. And then that information is going to be used to inform a request for proposals for the development of the property. And I don't know if, Peter, you want to start your presentation and pick up where I left off?
Sure. Let me see if I can share my screen. Are you all seeing something about long-term implementation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So Alexis Lanzolata, who's with Judy Barrett Associates as a lead consultant, wasn't available to come tonight. So I'm here primarily to talk about the different options and sort of help you with that discussion if possible. But I wanted to start with some question about how this is going to be implemented. So these are some of Alexis's slides. So where we are right now is sort of concluding the visioning process, as Gloria said, and hopefully tonight we can get a sense of what the preferred site concepts are that need to be combined, or if one of them is the clear winner, we'll go with that. After that, the town will put together an RFP for site development and put that out and interview developers and go through that process. The developer will have to get the necessary permits from the town, as any developer would do for any project. They have to apply for and receive funding if they need that, and then construction eventually will begin. And then after all that is concluded, there'll be the lottery for the tenant selection and the leasing process. So all of that is well well down the line. And what we really need to do now is focus on what the preferred site concept is so we can prepare that RFP. So I'm sort of assuming that all of you have seen some of the previous presentations. So this is really a summary of where we ended up for the two different sites. So the Main Street site, as you can see here, is smaller and constrained by surrounding development. That's good access to Main Street. We came up with 4 alternatives for that, really testing, as
Peter,
Gloria said, a range.
Can I interrupt for a
Sure.
second? So your slides aren't progressing, and we see a lot of all of the slides on the side. So is there a button that says like play slideshow or something like that?
Yes, sorry about that. I was playing the slideshow. Everything looked great to me. I'll go try a different approach and just show my entire screen, which might work better. And I'll bring up the show again. So now you're seeing the 4 alternatives for Main Street?
That's much
Very
better.
good. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not seeing anything except my slideshow, but at least we're making progress. So as I said, we came up with 4 alternatives to try to look at a range of different housing types that seem to be more or less acceptable at different densities, ranging from 25 units to 50 units. And that those numbers are arbitrary. It could, of course, be smaller or fewer than 25 units, or it could be more than 50 units. But as you can see, that once you get up above 50 units, the parking really takes up almost as much of a footprint as the buildings, unless you had a very tall, narrow building. So these are all 2.5, 3-story buildings, except for the cottages that would be smaller. And so all of them basically take their access off of Main Street on that northeast corner of the site and kind of try to organize the parking as efficiently as possible in a series of connected parking lots with turnarounds, either integrated in the lot or kind of separate, as you see on the townhouse and cottage example. And then all of them arrange the buildings around some sort of paths that lead from the parking to the buildings. In the case of the townhouses, every unit would have its own front door. In terms of the so-called stacked flats or apartments, they would go to a central entrance that would lead to a stairway or presumably an elevator. We also, along the way, I think of some of our earlier workshops, we presented a lot of case studies of possible development. And of course, we're really looking at what kind of architecture, what kind of building types would fit in with Chatham most appropriately, and what's the range of densities that seems to fit. And to help gauge that, sort of gauge the public preference for that, Alexis put together this visual preference survey that was administered that looked at a range of housing types, including cottages up to apartments. And what we learned is that people, not surprisingly, prefer the attractive, sort of quaint little cottage communities. And then after that, townhouses are most acceptable. And then the end of the line are the larger stacked flats or apartment buildings. Not too surprising. But we also talked in the different workshops about general styles of architecture. If I have to sort of make a recommendation right now in terms of design standards that might accompany the RFP, I think what's probably the best fit in terms of local preferences is this kind of approach, which is pretty common on Cape Cod as elsewhere, which is if you have townhouses, which are basically single-family houses that share 1 or 2 sidewalls with another unit, to organize them and design them so they look more like a single connected farmhouse or what's sometimes called a manor house or a state house. So it looks like a larger structure that might have 1 family in it, a big family, but it's in fact cut up into a number of smaller units. There's a lot of architects, including Union Studio and others, that are experimenting successfully with ways to get this sort of middle density of housing in a way that looks like a collection of single family houses that happen to be connected. So we're really looking at some of the principles that we can pull out and perhaps put into the RFP, like having, attractive traditional architecture with deep eaves and traditional detailing, having porches and a clear entrance where you can actually find where you're supposed to be going as you're looking for the entrance of a building. For taller buildings like the apartments on the right, to have, deep or tall roof lines where the third story is kind of tucked underneath dormers and sort of roofs that come down around the building, and to break up the mass into a series of sort of smaller masses that feel more like, again, single family houses or estates that sort of grew a little bit rather than big shoeboxes. So all of that, I believe, is possible to put into the RFP at some level that's sort of up to you to decide. So this is the Meeting House Road site. As you know, it's got an access to the buildable part of the site has to cross sort of a shallow ravine, which goes down about 15 feet and then goes back up again to the flat portion of the site. And we came up with, again, 4 or 5 different concepts for that, ranging from townhouses to cottages and apartments. All of them sort of share an access that comes off of Meeting House Road into some kind of a loop around that upper flatter part of the site or a parking lot. And then the homes are arranged, sort of around the periphery or in the center or to one side as best fits the particular use. So some of the things that came up sort of during the process is the complicated arrangement at the north part of the site where the abutter apparently has a driveway which encroaches on the Meeting House Road property. And what I understand, there's a plan in the works to hire an engineer to rework their entrance so that it can be separate from where it is now. And also to, I think that the abutter to the north of that one as well also is concerned about losing access to the driveway that currently goes through the site, which would probably have to be filled in to get access to the site itself. So this is sort of just a reminder of sort of, regardless, you have to get across that ravine, get up to the upper part of the site. Once you're there, you can arrange the houses in a cluster, in a circle. The parking can be in front of the houses or behind the houses. All of that could be tested by the developer. And then we also looked at the access across that ravine itself. And this is a grading plan. If you're familiar with grading plans, each of these is a 1-foot contour, but basically it would come pretty flat off of Meeting House Road. It would be filled, sort of going across that ravine would be a filled causeway. In this case, it has those lines show grades that go about 1 foot in 3 in terms of rise versus the distance. So that's basically a fairly, it's a slope you can take a lawnmower on if you have to take equipment up and down. So it is possible to grade kind of a causeway across that with a fair amount of fill as shown here. What a developer might do probably is look at some combination of retaining walls with filled slopes to not have to cut down as many trees or fill in such an area. But we just wanted to test to make sure it's possible to cross the site. That road could be done at no more than a 5% grade. And then once you get up into the upper part of the site, you basically can meet the existing grade pretty comfortably. So those are sort of the main options for the sites. And I'm going to stop sharing for the moment and take any questions that you have.
Questions from the board? Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this might be addressed to Gloria. I don't remember from the survey the preferences as between cottages and townhouses. Did we have a breakdown of how those respondents who were Chatham residents answered those questions? Or was it just, were the non-Chatham, because there were a lot of non-Chatham people who did participate?
I don't think we pulled out specifically the Chatham responses. The survey results were really interesting in many ways. there was a strong preference for townhouses in general, and there was this weird kind of unpreference, non-preference for cottages in the plan view. So if you remember when people were like looking at the plan and the cottages, they consistently ranked really low on the preference, but then when they saw pictures of cottage communities, then it ranked much higher. So you have to take all of these results with a grain of salt. The other thing that I was talking with someone about earlier is that on the Meeting House Road property, cottages actually ranked lower than apartment buildings in preference there. So it's true. I mean, just by the plan. And then when you looked at the visual preference survey, of course, apartment buildings ranked really low. So, I mean, it's a lot of information to have, and it's good information to have. My takeaway from the survey was that other than like this really strong preference for townhouses, there wasn't like a really clear message that was being sent about any particular development style.
So the townhouses are 2.5 stories or 3 stories? What are they?
I mean, they can be anything as designed, but the images that were shown tended to be 2.5 stories.
Okay.
So like the 2 stories and then the 3rd story under dormers, not like a full 3 stories.
Okay, thank you.
Shireen.
Thanks. I just, Gloria, wanted to know, or maybe, I know that the chair of the Community Housing Partnership is in the room, what recommendations that committee had discussed and thought were best for those sites.
Hello, everyone. Carol McClellan, Chair of the Community Housing Partnership. We've gone around the table a number of times, kind of waiting for more information in terms of the density that would be allowed for each type of build. I can tell you that I think the consensus, more or less, we didn't vote on this, but the consensus more or less is that I think we need to discover what our threshold is for the number of units we want on this, and then build it back from there. So if we have a tolerance for, 50 units on a site, start, how many do we want on that site? What's the minimum amount we want to build? And then look back on how we're going to do it. And I think really for the preference survey, the feedback is you can make it look like anything. Whether it's stack flats or the apartment buildings and even the townhouses, that's the exterior architecture. So I think sometimes people are voting on what it looks like, and then other people are voting thinking how the apartments are they going to be, what's going to be like to live there? Am I going to get an apartment? Am I going to get a townhouse? A different feel. So I would start with density. Where do we want to be? And then work back, and then the aesthetics we can tailor to what would fit Cape Cod. And when we look at the cottage colonies, obviously everybody likes that quintessential look, but they don't like it on the plan. So I mean, we can tailor, even if it's the stack flats, you can make them look
Like
aesthetically
townhouses.
pleasing, like little houses, or like every other house on the Cape. So I would start from density. What do we want? And then work back would be the best thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Because I just want to make clear this isn't boutique shopping. This is actually real life, decisions we're making here. And so when we're looking at what we want to do and what we want to achieve for the community, I think what we're trying to do is do as much as we can with what we have. That's where I'm landing in this whole scheme of things. How that looks, as Carolyn suggested, going backwards is a further discussion. So for me, it's the most we can get with, if it's 50 units for each of the sites, or if there's a compromise within the two to say 40, or maybe the fit at Meeting House is a little different because of the grade, then maybe there's there would be a rationale as not to do something. I don't think apartments would or stack would fit there. It just doesn't seem like it would make much sense on a hill like that, but that's where I'm landing right now. That's okay.
Bruce.
On a couple of those designs, it was obvious that parking was taking up a disproportionate amount of the space. Is there any possibility of a two-story, one of them being subterranean parking area in order to make the parking?
I would assume anything could be built.
But I don't know whether going towards that would run into too much political problems or money.
Probably if I could say something, probably the easiest way to do that would be first floor parking in townhouse units, which would be, just a garage door facing the road, and then you pull into a garage underneath your unit. And they're doing some where there's a single garage door, so it doesn't look like a giant garage. And then you pull in, and then maybe there's a double depth, so you can have one car behind the other inside the garage. So that's probably the easiest way to hide them. They do put, under an apartment, you could put a standard parking lot, and that's frequently done. I doubt that it's economically feasible for the type of housing that you're building here.
Okay, good.
So it probably is economically feasible for the townhouses, but probably not for the apartments.
All right, I'm going to make a comment and a question. First comment is, I recognize these two parcels are probably one of the biggest opportunities we've had for housing in quite some time. So I do think we need to figure out how to best utilize that. What does that mean? I'm not looking to put as dense maybe as other people may consider. I would want to find that, hearty balance of neighborhood feel. But this is this is one of our better chances to get some units in, and I think we need to figure out where that balance comes from. So I don't want to push the threshold too high, but I definitely don't want to leave ourselves short. On the Meeting House Road parcel, this is my question, because Main Street, I think we can work about the design, density, whatever. Meeting House Road, I think we have at least more visible. We have some factors with the neighbors, the old access road, driveway, and I think, well, at least personally, I would want to make sure we're very sensitive to what has occurred in that neighborhood for generations. Of these designs, and maybe this is not the right term, but what is the least impactful, what is the best balance to incorporate this project in balancing the existing neighbors and how they're impacted? Is there any one of these designs that is clearly less impactful, or what factors do we need to consider if we move forward with any of the options?
Do you mean specifically related to the access?
The access road or the abutting neighbors?
So I think that the access itself is going to be relatively similar no matter how you develop the site. So it's really going to be one road in and one road out. And in meetings on site with the neighbors and with the DPW director, it's really clear that they want to be separate from the development. So they don't want to share that access road. So that particular part of it, I think, can be accommodated. Peter's grading plan showed that it was possible to do the grading for an access road to get to the buildable upper flat portion of the site, and keep all of the grading away from their properties. So it's going to be possible to redo their access, keep it separate from our access. And like I said, no matter how you develop that site, it's going to be one road in and one road out, or one driveway in and one driveway out. Regarding the type of development, so everything that you're thinking about is going to be weighing values. Like, what do you value more in a project? So I can make the argument, although I'm just using this as a hypothetical, I can make an argument that a single apartment building in many ways is a better way of developing the site from the neighbor's perspective, because it's one building on a small footprint, and you can have 200 feet of buffer, like vegetative buffer that's not even touched. So there's a lot of separation. If you do cottages or even townhouses, it's going to be more spread out on the site. The units are going to come closer to the existing neighbors' houses. And I guess the question is, what's more important? Is that bigger buffer so valuable that you would consider doing an apartment building, which obviously is not anything that we have in Chatham. So it would not necessarily, fit in with the neighborhood, although there's definite advantages to it.
All right, fair enough. Mike, good evening. No? We'll give you an opportunity to weigh in on some initial questions if you'd like.
I'll be brief, and apologies to everybody for my lateness. Unfortunately, I have a commitment of many months standing that not only made me late, but also requires me to leave at 6:30. So with that apology, I'll be very simple. First of all, with respect to the issues that are articulated in the memo, my objective is, I don't want to call it density, my objective is units. I think it's important to not be crazy, but to take advantage of the opportunity here to make something of a dent in our desperately serious housing needs. So that's one. Two, I think we want to be energy efficient. I think we want to be, obviously, I don't mean to suggest at all that I don't want to take into account the either Chatham history, Chatham culture, Chatham what is typical, but at the same time, I think that we can do something that isn't necessarily what's always been done, which accommodates those considerations, but at the same time, frankly, as Gloria was talking about, with respect to apartments that leave green space, are energy efficient, are cost efficient, and give us units, more units per whatever it is, acre or unit of area. So those are the things that to me are the most important things. I also think, and I've said before, I think that it would be important. I like the idea that Carolyn McClellan has articulated and argued for, that we try to get more data from the community in terms of who are the clients that we are trying to serve here, who is the segment of the community that we want to really address. But at the same time, I also think that we can anticipate that there's going to be tremendous interest and desire for this housing opportunity if we do it right. So those are my general things. At last, you asked about parking. I would, there again, I would tend to push down on I'm not a 2 spots per unit guy. I think that for a whole host of reasons that we can think about something that's less than that, which again gives you back green space. It gives you more opportunities for buffers, the whole business. My last point is that I would like to maintain as much flexibility. I would hate to come out of this process going to an RFP process where we have so limited what it is that we think we're looking for, that we don't get an opportunity to really work with a developer or developers who can give us feedback, who can enter into a dialogue with us that will help us achieve our overall community aspirations for solving this problem. So those are generally my thoughts.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm interested in units. I don't know why we have 50 versus 25. It might be something a little north of 25 and a little south of 50. But I echo what Mr. Shell just said. I would love to sit down with a developer and ask he or she, what is the maximum amount of units that can be developed tastefully on this piece of land, knowing that we have an extreme dearth of housing in town, and we want to maintain the sensibility of what Chatham looks like and what our architectural taste is. And so when I look at the cottage colony with 50, it's too dense. I don't like it. When I look at townhouses, I like them. Now, that echoes, I think, what you heard from the public in the public forum as well. Now, putting townhouses as a meeting house, does that maximize the number of serviceable units we can get there? I don't know. And is it 8 buildings, 5 buildings, with how many units inside? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I know what I like. I like something that looks like Chatham, that maximizes the number of units without being gross.
Gloria, would you like to focus on one of the parcels and maybe kind of focus on how do you want to address tonight?
Yeah, we can take them parcel by parcel. Maybe start with Meeting House Road, because I
Okay.
feel like we've been talking about that.
Dean?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, do we need to dictate tonight how many units we want in a particular parcel? And what style of building we want? Is that what you need?
I would like to get to some answers about that so we can move the process forward.
Can we offer a range of of the number of units?
I think that makes the most sense. I think that from an RFP perspective, and like Carolyn was talking about, unit count and working back, I'm talking about RFP and working back. So we want to give parameters and guidelines. We don't want to dictate what can be built. I think one of the best ways to look at it is that if you have a minimum number of units that you would like to see, maybe a maximum, but probably not, a minimum number of units, that would be really helpful for a developer to come up with plans. I think that if you don't say we want between 35 and 40 units, but give a minimum and let them go, you might get a better range of projects. I think that given that the sites are relatively small, right, a couple of acres, even if you give a minimum but no maximum, I think that the sites are self-limiting enough that you're not going to see anyone propose something like 80 units. I don't even know if you'll see 50 units, even though Peter was able to get them on the site. I think that the only time that maximum minimum might not play out that way is if you specifically say we want to see apartment buildings. Then I think they can pack them on, and if you're open to any apartment buildings, I would maybe put an upper end on that.
So how does
Yeah.
the process work? So let's say we put in the RFP, we want a minimum of 30, 35 units. When the developer comes forward with their response, do we have the opportunity to discuss with them and perhaps negotiate with them how many units we would want?
So you would end up, ideally we'll get multiple responses, and then you would pick the response that fits, your vision for the site the best, or the community's vision for the site the best. And then there would be some room for negotiation. But I would hope that we would get a variety of responses. I would love to see responses that show, 30 units and 50 units and, townhouses and some mix of different
Yeah,
things.
I just wanted to say, because I haven't spoken yet on what my thoughts were, I've been simply asking questions. I guess I'm kind of bridging between what Jeff was just saying and what Corey had said earlier. I think 50 units might be too much on either of these parcels. I think the parcel, acknowledging what you said about the sort of buffering between the neighborhood and the Meeting House Road parcel, I think we have to be particularly sensitive in that location. But I certainly don't favor apartment buildings in this town. But I do think if we could get something higher than 25, but not as high as 50, that would be where I would come down. I like the townhouses myself, but I'm not wedded to that concept. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Shereen?
Thank you, Corey. The apartment building concept for Meeting House Road, I don't think it works at all. And so, if we're talking about providing the opportunity to the developer, that's really great guidance because, and knowing that they could build, they're not just going to build to spec, they're going to build to what, to basically spec but not spec. So I would say that a minimum number of units on that property could be in the 30 to 35 range to start if we feel that 50 is too much at this moment, and look at the idea of I personally think cottages would be a nicer fit for there because the cottages that are in keeping in that neighborhood. However, if the bigger concern to the neighbors themselves is that sort of buffer zone, then the townhouse concept, to me, would be probably the more preferable to go there.
Okay. Jeff,
Agreed.
agreed?
Yep.
Bruce, you have I guess I'll wait, I mean, apartments, yeah, I mean,
I want to add something else
please,
too.
yeah, I'll let you finish your thoughts,
If
please.
I might, just one
Yeah.
second. I'm out on apartments as well. No go on apartments.
I think I think apartments is pretty much off.
Right.
With whatever we ask for, at what point does town meeting get involved?
Not
When-
at all.
Well, I guess mechanics, and maybe someone can guide me with this. I mean, you're looking for guidance from this current trust. It is not set in stone, but you're looking for some pretty solid general, foundation of where to start moving this process forward. Because for timing wise, at some point, the new trust will take over, and they will, I mean, but be blunt about it, they will either continue with that same path. They would have, I believe, the authority to make adjustments to it if they say it seem fit.
Correct.
So that would be some of the mechanics of it. So, if anyone wants to add anything for that? I mean,
My question is from, I'm inclined towards the apartment, just to get the units. But I don't think there's a chance in the world, if town meeting had a veto on that apartments, I think once they're there, people will love them. But
So we don't have to go back to town meeting.
we
for
do
this.
not.
On this property, we don't. Because
Okay.
this was completely bought with 100% Affordable Housing Trust money. And so we didn't appropriate it.
Will it,
Wouldn't you have to go back to town meeting if you need money to fund the project?
yes.
So, it's unlikely that we will have to provide additional subsidy for an affordable housing project at 80% AMI and below, maybe even 100% and below. If you start talking about adding in a lot of attainable units, especially units over 120% AMI, that's when you start potentially needing additional town subsidy. And you can't provide that subsidy through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at this point. So it would have to be appropriated through town meeting.
Mike?
I want to make two comments here. First of all, the business about the transition, notwithstanding that I appear to be not quite in the same place as my colleagues, at least to the right here, I'm a big believer that when we get done with this process, we need to have something that we believe is going to be acceptable when fully understood and when the plan is laid out for everyone. And I think my own view is that, whoever becomes that new trust will also be motivated by that kind of a view of things. I don't think anybody wants to swim too violently upstream with respect to that, whether we have to go to town meeting or not. So that's one. The second thing is, I would hate to find out that the developer at some point says to us, and I'm making this up, but I would hate to find out that we can get the kind of number of units that we want from a building design that we end up liking better somewhere down the road than the one we think we like now. And so, given what I've heard here, I'd rather talk in terms of units. And, maybe to me, 30 is a little on the low side, but if we're talking about something in the 30 to 40 range, I'd rather be talking about that and saying to a developer, give us a design that achieves our unit desires, or designs, alternatives that we can look at and decide, oh my gosh, maybe we like the, sorry to use the word, apartment design better than we like the townhouse design, for example. So, it's somewhat where you come from, and, apartments don't offend my sensibilities the way they do some others here, and I fully understand that. I'll leave it at that.
So, follow-up question on that. So if this board were to say 30 to 40 units is what our range we're ideally looking for, and that was moved forward, and, the developer comes back and said, okay, I can do it this way, and I can do it this way. And I know you're looking for ideally one design, but some options out there, and we'd have like option A, option B, and we could get a better feel for it. Is that moving it forward quickly enough for you? Or, I'm just trying to think realistically. I don't think we want to pigeonhole ourselves to 25, 30, 35. We're kind of philosophically, but we got a range. We want to maximize, but not
overdo
overcrowd.
it. Yeah. So that's why I was asking for, I think a minimum would be really great. And I think that if you have a very strong preference for something you don't like, it would be important to spell that out. Other than that, I think that we have some really great affordable housing developers on the Cape who have done models that have fitted in other areas of the Cape. And I think that you'll get a better response if you set these types of parameters.
Okay. A couple of questions from the board, then I'm going to circle into the audience in a moment.
I'm fine with that. There's nothing that I don't hate. I just, and I am making my own opinion here. So I like the idea that we're looking at a unit-based approach to this. And I guess the next question is, what AMI are we looking at as well?
Yeah.
All right. Any comments from the board at the moment, or the trust? All right, I'm going to open it up to the public first. Anyone in the audience tonight who has a comment or a question? Yes. No.
We can put camera on. Okay. I think there's a mic. Yeah.
Gloria Hicks, I'm one of the abutters at the Meeting House property. And I want to thank everybody here, as well as the plan design, for including that access road, because that was not a part of the plan initially. So thank you, for that, so we can see it. When I hear, I've talked about apartments, they just don't belong in Chatham, I'm sorry. And then when I hear townhouses, the first thing that pops into my head from my backyard is lighting. Simple thing like lighting is gonna dramatically affect the neighborhood. Things that we're not necessarily thinking about, we're talking about density or units or getting the most bang for our buck. I'm thinking in more simple terms of my everyday life. And I appreciate the need, and it's a really fragile balance. I agree with you, Mr. Metters, because this has to be done right. To quote you, I think, Mr. Dykens, way back. The surveys that I remember seeing, 50% of those surveyed wanted the small cottages. It was more than any other response from what I remember from the chart that I got originally. And I mean, the Bakers are gonna lose their driveway, so that's like an insult enough. But we're trying to minimize the impact that this has on our neighborhood. And I know I might come off like I'm against affordable housing. I am not. The need is there. I don't even know how some people can stay on the Cape and work and live and live a good life. I know what it costs to live in Chatham and to own a house. But I'm trying to, I knew from the beginning that I would always be collateral damage in this development. I am trying to minimize, and I'm asking you to minimize the impact that it has on all of us that live there. The board members, I know, Ms. Davis, you've talked about the cottages and keeping that sort of feel. The houses are very small in that neighborhood. We also have the church across the street. I can't imagine them not selling at some point. They're open 8 weekends a year, and they've got 9 acres. So it is only a matter of time before something is done with that, which is going to have huge, huge implications for those of us that live there. So I'm not just looking at this project. I'm looking at the big picture. You're going to be looking for more and more places to develop. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've said this before. You can negotiate all you want with the developer, but the developer is going to trump what you want because it's going to be his deal. And then the state, because we are under the 10% threshold, we're only at 4%, 4.8%, I believe. The state can say, you know what? We realized you wanted like 25 units or 35 units, but you really have to do more. So at every level, this changes. So you can be reassuring to those of us that live in the neighborhood, and I know you've been very attentive and you've been listening, and it's appreciated. But the reality is, we don't have control over that. I don't, you don't, and the developer, to some extent, is going to lose his control if the state comes in and says, we need more units. But when I sit in my backyard, I'm thinking about the little things. I'm thinking about not losing my sky with lighting. I'm thinking about noise and traffic, which is why we wanted a separate, I want a separate entrance to 137 to try to buffer some privacy that I'm going to lose. So that being said, and I also said this, I'm repeating myself every step of the way here, I would like you to make decisions as if you would live there. It's that simple. That is your compass. And I understand that there is a tremendous need, but this has got to be done right. There's going to be a lot more opportunities in town. There's going to be things coming up all the time. And I need you to just make decisions. It's really not any more complicated than that. And to be respectful of what the town of Chatham looks like. Every decision that you make, every decision that the zoning board makes changes the way Chatham looks forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hicks. Was another, John?
John Hogan, South Chatham, and I'll throw in a little bit. When I initially started, I thought I was going to become an architect, but that obviously didn't work. So one of the things I was hearing tonight was, it was kind of like cottages or townhouses or. It was not like, how about a little of this and a little of that? Like, maybe we could put some cottages sort of near the abutter property line and then put the townhouses further away. So you would have a mixture of, because then it would look a little less like it was just a massive project that just dropped in and they were all cookie cutter. So just having the idea of different types of units, maybe it might be something you might consider. The other thing in terms of, you kept talking about number of units. Well, I would also think you want to factor in how many bedrooms and how many, combinations thereof. Because even, you could possibly, I'm not sure, but I'm just saying, maybe in the space you would need for two-bedroom units, you could get 3 smaller one-bedroom units. And even a one-bedroom unit might be a case where you might have a smaller one-bedroom unit for a single person versus a little slightly larger one for, for 2 people. When you think about some of these retirement facilities and so on, or, adult care facilities, they're not that large, but, they're big enough for one person. So that might be something to factor in too. I don't think if you've thought about that aspect of it, just to have different sized within a bedroom unit. So that was my couple of things I thought about. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I can comment on bedroom count if
Please,
it.
yep.
So the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly the DHCD, produces an annual low-income housing tax credit plan. The plan for 2022 to 2023 requires that at least 65% of the units in a project must be 2 or more bedrooms, at least 10% must be 3 bedrooms. unless that percentage is determined to be infeasible, or you make an application to have a different bedroom count. But this is all things that are set at the state level. So we can talk about it a little bit. I think that realistically, we should maybe think about doing more one-bedrooms, but right now, there's state guidelines for that.
Thank you. There was a hand in the back? Yes, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. David Farrell from 2355 Main Street. It's right at the intersection of 28 and Meeting House Road. I've been a firm supporter of affordable housing since I was old enough to go to town meeting. And I am an avowed environmentalist. I bought the land next to me, which was the Jordan property, so that affordable housing wouldn't be put on it, or any kind of development. And I have a lovely wildlife corridor that is going to remain conservation land in perpetuity. I also bought the adjoining house there, and I am renting it at markedly less than the fair market value to a family who has school children here in town, and it's a multi-year lease. So, as one of the town fathers said to me, "Wow, David, you really put your money where your mouth is, so I hope you hear me sincerely." I think the manatee in the room has been brought up. It's the church property there at Our Lady of Grace. I had proposed a year ago, and I don't know if anybody's discussed it. It's not too late, there's been nothing dug, but the nice 5 acres that you're talking about stripping could remain abutting the twine field. Has there been any approach to the Archdiocese about that property? I just can't believe demographically the Archdiocese is going to need it in the long haul, and what goes there, I think, is a big concern. It'd be a nice place for affordable housing, and you keep 5 acres across the street. Has anybody even approached them on that topic?
Mr. Chair, so I can say the town has approached them when they had submitted the RFP response for this property, the Meeting House Road. And at that time, they weren't ready to do anything with that property. I would imagine they probably would notify the town as soon as they would, but honestly, I haven't contacted them in probably about a year or so. And certainly we can reach out again. They really appreciated the affordable housing restriction, especially for their parishioners and in a sense of community. But again, just to say, they have not offered us the other property across the street.
Well, I may contact them if that's all right and see if I can put a bug in their ear. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to anyone online. Is there,
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have two. So first is Carol Gordon.
Carol, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Fine. First of all, my preference would be cottages or townhouses, and certainly 25 units would be the preferred density. I'm also wondering about who would finally make, we can talk a lot, but who makes the final decision? Does this work between the state and the developer, or who's going to say it's 25 units and that's it? Will we get a chance to see 2 of the renderings so we could choose which we would like? I mean, South Chatham isn't the only place for affordable housing. And we have Commerce Park, we have the water station, we have the pump station. So we have a lot, and we'd really prefer to keep that density down, or I would prefer to keep the density down. But I appreciate this chance to talk, and maybe you can answer some of my questions.
All right, thank you. Would anyone like to respond? Gloria, maybe?
Respond to the
Carol's question.
about who makes the final decision?
Correct.
About it. So the near-term process is we're coming up with quote-unquote preferred development concepts. And Peter's going to do some more plans, and we're going to present them at a community forum. Like the third and final one, we'll get feedback, we'll tweak them if we need to. But those are really going to be just references for the RFP. So we will issue the RFP, hopefully with not too, specific criteria, which would limit creativity. And hopefully we'll get multiple responses. Whoever's on the selection committee for the RFP will have the opportunity of looking at all of those and then picking the preferred developer. At that point, there'll be a certain amount of back and forth, but it's not like the DHCD is going to come back and say, oh, you're proposing 30 units, we want to see 60. Sometimes there's a tweak of like a few units here and there, but it's not, they're not going to double the units. And ultimately, the town has to come to an agreement with the developer for exactly what's going to go there. This is all going to be written in a land development agreement, which is a binding contract. And then at that point, once everything is agreed to, that's when the development's going to happen. So there are multiple opportunities to really nail down exactly what we're going to get.
May I say something else?
Yes,
I was
please.
wondering, who's going to be on the selection committee? How do you get on that committee?
So that would be up to the chief procurement officer in the town, who is our town manager.
Okay.
And I would imagine, the trustees or I should say the trustees would be presented with it or have at least a subcommittee involvement with it, because it's the trust that would be awarding the RFP to the appropriate developer.
Anyone from South Chatham on the committee?
Unlikely.
Not yet.
I volunteer.
Next speaker is Elaine Gibbs.
Elaine, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I had seen this presentation, I think that was given before the planning board, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. So I think to a certain degree that this conversation is a little premature because I think there are a lot of unanswered questions. First of all, I want to say that Meeting House Road is totally different than the Buckley property, and they should be treated differently. I absolutely understand the concerns of the people who live at Meeting House. One of the things that came out during the presentation is that there are a number of people who like the idea of home ownership. And it seems to me that if it's not currently permitted under the agreement with the church, that a discussion be made. I think that would be a really good place potentially for Habitat for Humanity. A couple homes in there that would be bought because, again, there is a need and people are very interested in home ownership. And that would have the neighborhood impact, and it would be just small, lovely homes like we've seen on George Ryder South. So I don't know if that's a consideration. But I think it's premature because I'm not sure what the objective is, and you can, challenge me if I'm wrong, but what I heard, are we going for rental versus ownership? Are we going for workforce housing versus year-round housing? And how many affordable, attainable, and market rate units are there? My understanding from that conversation is that when you use nonprofits, there are certain criteria in terms of the mix. When you go to private developers, you have more flexibility. If you go to a private developer, my understanding is we would probably end up having to donate the land and write a check for millions. When you look at these designs, obviously the cottages probably are more expensive than the larger units. There's been no talk about the cost per unit. Some were saying that at that meeting that the quote from some of these developers is $700,000 a unit. So, those questions have to be answered. So are we considering a nonprofit where we are very restricted as to how many attainable units we can get? If we can only get 1 or 2 attainable units in an area, and then others have to be market rate depending on who is the developer, I'm not sure it accomplishes your objective. I know we're trying to provide a need, but that need hasn't even been defined yet. You know, what do we want? If there's 50 units, are half of them going to be market rate? Are 20% going to be attainable, and are the rest going to be affordable? Or is that not even a possibility? So I think those are the kind of questions we need answered before we're talking about the aesthetics. Obviously, we want it to fit in terms of Chatham, but I think we've got to know what the need is and what people are looking for. I also heard at that meeting that people are now saying two, 3-bedroom apartments are not what's needed anymore. They are not looking for family units necessarily outside of ownership. That it's really 1 or 2 bedrooms with 1 or 2 people. So that changes the dynamic of what's going to be built. So, and those things haven't been presented to you, but that's what was discussed at the planning board meeting. So I think we got to put all those into the equations and find out what we hope to accomplish at every affordability level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional names online? All right, so I think we've got oh, sorry, Caroline.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things because I have been an advocate for home ownership. I do think that in this instance, though, I would, what are our numbers, and then let it fall. I don't know if home ownership can build to the density that we want. But if we end up at Meeting House, which I think would be a smaller number of units than it would be on Buckley, you know, what is it, 20, 25 units? Put that out in the RFP. If a home ownership model came back and fit and we liked it, fine, but if not, if these other units are gonna give us a better buffer zone, if that's more important, but we'd be able to see it. But again, dictate it to the number of units. And then the other thing about the number of bedrooms, which I also, I'm very, you know, I know I'm not advocating that we do all 1-bedroom units. I just think we need to do more 1-bedroom units than are traditionally built, because it's always been really shy on the numbers. So if we're doing 65%, then try to get as many as we can, maybe 20% 1-bedroom units or something. And I, just my own personal preference, I would be putting the 1-bedroom units on the Buckley property and try to keep it more family-oriented or with families in that Meeting House Road. But I'm not married to that either, but that would be, if I'm looking at it and I was waving a wand, I would think that's where the density would lie. But again, as much as I want home ownership, and I want it to be somewhere in our plan for housing, doesn't have to be on these units, but I think we need to just stick with what are our numbers that we want and let it fall where it is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've got a lot of questions that have been pushed forward, some thoughts. Not sure we made a tremendous amount of progress, but as far as the next steps, what would you like from us tonight?
So let's review what we've talked about for Meeting House Road so we can really make sure that we're all on the same page and that Peter understands what you're looking for. So what I was hearing was that everyone wanted to see more than 25 units, but they thought the 50 units was too much. Maybe a 30 or 40 unit minimum would make sense. Buffers to abutters are also important. While it's not unanimous, I think that townhouses are generally out, that wasn't the preferred building type. Or, oh, you didn't say that.
No.
No, not at all.
Apartments are still a possibility. Okay, so,
So,
okay, so
Townhouse-
really we're not dictating building type. Okay.
I would say townhouses and cottages were preferable. Apartment was a minority of direction. But we weren't trying to lock in any particular design at this point. I think we were kind of going to the units concept, understanding, as you explained earlier, certain percentages are going to be 2, certain bedrooms, certain percentage will be 3 bedrooms. We want to understand how many 1-bedrooms we want to go, giving those parameters that are already going to be in play.
Okay.
Where direction is more on the unit versus the hard design at the moment. I think that's board's position? Yes,
Okay.
okay.
Do you have
Yes.
preferences about parking? I know I heard some mention that the 2 spots per unit is not necessarily something that's critical.
A question
Can we-
on that is exactly who is the target audience? I only ask that question is, are we talking to have, obviously two-bedroom, two working families, 2 individuals, 2 cars? Are we having a 1-bedroom where someone maybe does landscaping? So are they gonna have a work truck, a trailer? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what the market is, so we understand what needs we need to provide on the site.
So I think that's an impossible thing to anticipate. I think that in general, and this came out in the RFI responses, most developments that have happened on Cape for affordable and attainable housing have not had 2 parking places per unit. They've averaged out to be like 1.5. Another way of looking at it is like, 2 spaces if you have a 2-bedroom and 1 space if you have a 1-bedroom, and maybe 5 guest parking places or something like that. I guess the question that I would have, and this would help Peter in his conceptual drawing, is are you tied to 2 parking spaces per unit or not?
Not tied.
Perfect, thank you. What about height?
Ideally, probably within our zoning
But keep
bylaw.
within zoning, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
30 feet.
Let me think of other
Did I hear 40
questions.
feet? No.
30.
And so,
Try.
there's the question of ownership versus rental. I think that if you recall back to, I want to say it was the April 11th presentation by Barrett Planning, and also in our RFI responses, funding that's available for affordable housing is really all for rentals. So if you want to do home ownership, it's going to have to be with like a mission-based, organization like Habitat or something. And also what came out in the RFI is that, everyone wants to build at a higher density and townhouses and things like that because there's an economy of scale. There's also energy efficiency, as Mike mentioned earlier. But the respondents also felt comfortable that if you did want some single-family units or cottages, that they would be open to carving off a portion of a site or both sites in order to accomplish that. So is that something that you're thinking about doing for the Meeting House Road property or the Buckley property or both? The idea of like having a, set aside for some single-family cottages?
I'd like
Both.
the option, not,
Both.
I'd like the option, yes. My personal opinion.
Bruce?
You say the state mandates a percentage of, but there is a petition on that. Is it burdensome?
No, I think it's likely that we'll probably, based on the housing needs assessment, which hasn't even started yet, but just understanding where we are on the Cape
We'll be
with
able
like
to do
need,
it.
that we will likely be able to petition and get accepted for more 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms.
As much as 50 would fly?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know our need that specifically to say
But
that.
if our need was in that direction, do you think the state would, if we had the documentation, they'd probably grant it?
With documentation, yes.
Thank you.
If I may, look, the sentiment here, I understand the sentiment for ownership. I just would hate to think that the question is, how many bells and whistles can we layer on this? I'd like the project to be within reason, as simple and streamlined as possible. If we can have a productive conversation with a developer that includes the option to hive off a piece of this property or that for ownership, I can appreciate that. But I also think that we got some pretty thorough information that pushed us in the direction of rental, and I think we should take account of that.
I also want to add that these 2 properties, while they're our largest properties, there's still only 2 out of the 4 parcels at play. We still have 127 Old Harbor Road, and we have Stepping Stones Road, which may be more appropriate for that kind of ownership model. at like a smaller scale.
Fair enough. Okay.
Like no parcel has to meet all of our needs.
All right. Any final questions or thoughts?
Would the same things apply to the Main Street property, or do you have different thoughts for that? Like a higher density or
Again, I think we're thinking as many units as reasonable, define reasonable, with no specific design locked in on that property.
I would just say that I think the surrounding community probably is a little bit more of an influence in the in the Main Street situation than it is Meeting House. And I don't mean to in any way suggest that it's in the middle of the neighborhood center. I'll just put it that way.
okay. Okay, any final thoughts?
We have one resident participating remotely. It's Carol Gordon.
Carol?
Hi, I just want to say that, I think that the South Chatham neighborhood is equally as important as the neighborhood on Main Street, and the density should be considered as such. I really think we should consider that, and the lower the density, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, Carolyn, one more time, and then I think we're going to bring this chapter to a close for tonight.
No, I'm fine. I think you just heard what I said, right?
We did hear, yes.
I just want to know,
Okay, thank you.
were you going to cap the AMI that we were going to do on Buckley tonight, or is that not on the table? What we're going to, are we going to limit what AMI we're going to go to for the, are we going to limit it at 120 or 100 or whatever?
I
That was
think,
my
so
question.
I think for the RFP, we'll definitely have to do that. We'll have to give some guidance for that. How that influences Peter's plans, I'm not sure that that's critical at this point, unless you guys want to talk about that and come to a decision. But I remember our last conversation when we were talking about the RFI responses, I thought there was a general agreement that, because the market rate is coming in at between 100 and 120% AMI, it really doesn't make any sense to build above 120% AMI, unless I was hearing that wrong from the last meeting.
No, I think you heard that right.
Okay,
And we have a mix of affordable and attainable on the Buckley project.
correct. So really, the Meeting House Road property is going to be all 100% AMI and below because it was all bought with trust funds. And then the Buckley property has a little bit more flexibility for having some combination of affordable, 80% and below, on up to 120% AMI.
Correct.
Correct.
Excellent. You guys are great. Thank you so much.
It's early in the night.
Thank you, Gloria.
All right, with that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees.
So moved.
Second? All right. Select Board, or Trustee Member Shell.
Aye.
Trustee Member Dykens.
Aye.
Trustee Member Davis.
Aye.
Trustee Member Nacastro.
Aye.
Trustee Member Bean.
Aye.
And Trustee Member Metters says aye. So we have adjourned the trust just for belts and suspenders. I'm going to reconvene for the Select Board member. Can't believe it. All right. So official roll call, Select Board Member Dykens.
Here.
Select Board Member Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member DeCastro.
Present.
And Select Board Member Metters is present. We will now move into our regular agenda. We will start with the set of minutes for August 29th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Corrections, omissions. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the August 29th minutes, on page 2, second paragraph from the bottom, final line, I think it should read, to not have a small commercial or residential exemption. And then on page 8, the second paragraph, Mr. Dykens made a motion to recommend, I think we have to insert the words approval of a transfer. And then on page 9, third paragraph from the bottom, last line, I think you can correct me, because the town manager is the one that made this comment. Was it at the CFAL or at the community center where that incident involving the lack of a shower was present? I can't remember which building.
CFAL.
It was the
Center for Active
CFAL,
Living.
so that should be replaced. Those are my edits. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Feder says aye. Minutes for September 12th, 2023. Omissions, suggestions, corrections? Dean?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. On page 7, sixth paragraph down, George Myers, Chatham. I think it should read George Myers, out of state. I don't believe he is a Chatham resident any longer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any
And
additional?
so I move approval.
Yeah, we need to move it. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Second. All right. Now omissions, corrections. Any additional ones? None. All right. Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
And I will recuse myself because, or abstain because I was not present at that meeting. All right. Public announcements and agenda item request. I will start with the board. Shereen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was contacted by the chair of the Shellfish Advisory Committee about expressing some concerns that he had had from members of his committee and then subsequently some shellfishermen about some signage that's being put up at Monomoy Wildlife Refuge. And so they have invited the manager to their meetings to talk about the management plan and what's going on and what kind of studies are being conducted by wildlife refuges around the country. Constable Gagné is really engaged in conversation with them, but in talking with the town manager last week, I thought it would be really a good idea, knowing that we have a memorandum of understanding and we have our plan with them, that we invite the manager here to, talk about the refuge, talk about what they're doing there, and just make sure we're on the same page about our understanding about our agreements.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dean?
Mr. Chairman, I have a potential agenda item request relative to the Council on Aging, but I would like to request the chair's indulgence to defer my presenting that until we get to agenda item F1, which is the follow-up discussion of the special town meeting, because I'd like to hear some of the conversation then before I determine whether I'm going to offer that.
Acknowledge and
If
accept.
that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. That is fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, additional board? All right, anyone from staff? I know Judy Giorgio has one, as an announcement.
Yes, Judy Giorgio is participating remotely.
Hi, everyone. I'm here as a representative of Chatham Recycles and the Eldridge Public Library. We're having an event on September 23rd, which is this Saturday. It's a Fix-It Clinic. Fix-It Clinic, for those who don't know, is an all-ages, do-it-together repair activity where people bring broken household items and learn to assess and disassemble, and repair instead of throwing them away. We're going to have volunteer coaches that can assist with small appliances, electronics, wooden items, bikes, sewing, mending, knitting, fishing equipment, general household items, and jewelry, and anything else. The only thing we can't, no large appliances or anything. This is going to be, again, at the Eldridge Public Library on September 23rd, this Saturday from 10:30 to 1:30. It's a really great activity. We've all visited them in other towns, and it's a great way to teach people how to repair their items instead of throwing them out. And the bicycles are going to be outside, so people can sign up for that, and everything else will be downstairs. To register, we are asking that people pre-register, and they can do that by going to eldridgelibrary.org and go to the calendar of events. If they don't pre-register, we will take walk-ins, so if people have to find things to fix and show up unregistered, that would be fine as well. So we hope that the community will support this great event. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional staff? No? Anyone from the audience who is present tonight? Anyone online?
Nope.
None. All right, moving on. We have a public hearing. We have a utility pole hearing for a new jointly owned pole on Dusty Miller Lane. We have a public hearing notice. If we could have read, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing at 5:30 PM on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, to consider a joint petition from Verizon New England, Inc., and NSTAR Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy, to install one jointly owned pole 469/1.5 on Dusty Miller Lane at the site of 108 Mill Hill Road at Eversource's request. Public is welcome to attend the meeting in person or participate via a link in the meeting's posted agenda. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Signed, the Select Board.
Thank you. Who is presenting?
Looks like we have Alexander Marrero.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm a representative of Verizon New England. So my name is Alexander, last name Marrero, Marrero. I'm an employee of Pike, PIKE, Telecom and Renewables LLC, an authorized contractor for Verizon of New England Incorporated, and I have been asked to speak on their behalf about this petition. Verizon of New England Incorporated is petitioning the Select Board of the Town of Chatham to place one new joint-owned pole to be numbered 1.5 to be located on the public way of Dusty Miller Lane in a point approximately 114 feet from existing pole 1, Dusty Miller Lane, and approximately 106 feet from existing pole 2, Dusty Miller Lane, in a location on the side of the address located 108 Mill Hill Road. Pole to be placed would be a standard wood utility pole, size 45 foot, class 1. Verizon New England Incorporated is requesting this on behalf of NSTAR Electric, doing business as Eversource, due to planned electric system upgrades in the area. I can also answer any questions that the Select Board might have about this petition.
All right, thank you very much. Since this is a public hearing, I'm going to open up to the public first. Is there anyone in the live audience who has a question or comment? Is there anyone online that has a question or comment?
No.
Is there a question or comment from the board? Would anyone like to make a motion? Dean?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the request of Verizon New England and NSTAR Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy, to install the pole as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. It is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, drinking water testing and pumping update, Director of Public Works, Rob Faley.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in your agenda packets, just a brief update on the design for Training Field Wells 5 and 8. So the temporary treatment at Well 5 continues to operate as expected through the summer season. We plan on shutting it down just after Columbus or Indigenous Peoples holiday. The permanent treatment facility at Wells 5 and 8, once onboarded, will begin with the contractor pre-qualification review. We anticipate issuing technical bid documents next month, and DEP just issued our permission to advertise, so that's a good milestone to get through. As far as construction at the facility for wells 10 and 11, things are moving along nicely. The interior is coming along with Robert B. Auer. A lot of the solar system and interior applications are nearing completion. Hopefully we'll have that up and running sometime later this fall. The exterior is substantially complete. Site work is wrapping up. I think there's just a few, doors to be installed and things of that nature, but things are moving along very nicely there. For the water pumping status, for the month of August, we've been running the wells approximately 9 to 17 hours per day. Water storage tanks hit low-level alarm in August 6 times. Again, all of those days were on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. And I've attached pumping comparison reports for your review in the agenda packet. The next page is the pumping comparison table for August 2023 as compared to August 2022. You see we are approximately 3% lower than August of 2022, which equates to about 2.3 million gallons less. Strange phenomenon this month, so far for September, we're 25% higher in usage than we were of September last year. Not really sure if maybe last September was extremely wet, but it seems like this September has been extremely wet. So we're not really sure how to correlate that yet, but maybe things will turn around with the wet weather we've been having recently. The next page is August gallons pumped per well. It's a new addition to the report. If the select board likes that information, we can continue it in future months, but it was just some additional information that I thought may be handy to have for discussion.
I'll keep it, please.
Okay. August 2023, we pumped over 76 million gallons. And the final page of the report is the 5-year pumping comparison. I do apologize that I forgot to provide the well status at the bottom of each column, but that has not changed from last month's report. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Questions or comments from the board? Dean?
I just want to say, these are great reports. I really appreciate the level of detail that you're providing us, as well as in the town manager's report for your entire department. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I echo Select Board Member Nicastro's comment. They are a great report. I love the longitudinal year-over-year comparison for the month. I look at the hours of pumpage, we'll look at the number of gallons, et cetera. So it's really very informative, and I'm sure it takes some time to do so. I really appreciate it. And I attribute our lower usage to it's been wet, so the demand for pumping is not so bad. And last year we had an awful drought, so I think that probably factors into it big time. Thanks, Rob.
Shireen.
Rob, just a question. I mean, because this is good to, data for us to have and going forward. And are you seeing any trends or things that are, falling out of place or standing out to you when you analyze any of the monthly data for the 5-year trends or along the way, except for that Monday, Wednesday, Friday uptick of water use, which you can assume is probably
It's seasonal, so
Seasonal
that'll,
stuff, yeah.
that'll go away. No, it's just, the trend seems to be that we're using less water, and, maybe we can attribute that to conservation efforts. People are volunteering to use less. The anomaly for this month so far is kind of concerning. Again, as irrigation systems get shut down throughout the month, I think we'll have better luck. I know some of our folks that are being called to shut down irrigation systems and do the backflow test, finding that a lot of them are already shut down already and blown out by landscapers. So I think we're heading in the right direction.
great. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the data. Questions from the audience? Questions from anyone online?
No.
No? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
One brief one, 10 and 11. When are they going to come online?
I can't pin out, an exact date, probably sometime late November, December.
Okay, good.
Things are on track, though.
Yeah, good. That looks good. I want to move in. Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to public comments on our business agenda. As I mentioned earlier, item number 1, the special town meeting follow-up discussion. I'm going to allow any public comments or questions during that specific agenda item, but all the rest of the items that were listed or previous are up for consideration at the moment. So are there any questions or comments on our regular business agenda? From the audience and here? Anyone online?
No.
All right. Special town meeting of September 18th, 2023, follow-up discussion. I'm going to make a couple brief comments and then we will kick it off. Last night, tremendous turnout. We had the main gym, auditorium, and the slim gym quite packed. The outcome of the Center for Active Living was not put through by the voters, And I know a lot of people probably are not aware of this, but we had a little glitch in the Slim Jim at the very tail end of the meeting. So for any rumors or whatever, I want to make sure we clarify the information. We've already talked with the town manager, the town moderator. An action was taken actually at the meeting last night, but just for clarification, I want to come right from me. So when the final votes were tallied last night, the tally cards that were collected in the Slim Jim, there were 3 of them. Myself and 2 other staff members who tallied the cards in. For one reason or another, when they were brought into the gym, they were not all tallied into the main numbers that is the electronic and the yellow cards. So there was a little confusion in the Slim Jim because the numbers that were being recorded or mentioned by the moderator clearly didn't represent the over 300 voters that were in the Slim Jim. Long story short, we did go in, we did pull all 3 slips. They were added up. It still made a gap of about 100 votes. So it did not impact the vote, but it was a little glitch that did happen. It should not have happened, and I think it's going to be one of several items that are going to be brought up for discussion tonight of how we can improve the process moving forward. So just in case any rumors are out there, there was a little incident last night. It was addressed immediately, and it had no impact on the final vote, but it was definitely a learning event. So with that said, I will start. Who would like to make any comments on the town meeting last night? Dean.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to divide the discussion into a comment on the process that you just talked about? Because I know the moderator is here.
The moderator's here, yeah. We can address the voting element first, if you like, and then any other element further. I'm fine with that.
If we have any substantive comments on the item that was before the voters last night, I would suggest that be
separate,
deferred for separate conversation after we've dealt with the
All right,
voting.
we're going to start with the voting process and the mechanics and those. So, Shireen.
I had a friend share some of the stats. I'm not sure if the clerk has these as well, but it was noted that there were 1,395 voters that turned out last night.
1375.
75,
Yes.
but it was something of like a 27% increase
Yes.
from the last town meeting, which I thought was fascinating. So as far as what happened last night, I think that if there are any contingency plans for additional use of rooms because of overflow, I think there really needs to be a very succinct implementation contingency plan that's well thought out and written out and defined, as far as staffing and counters and counting systems, and it should be articulated to all that participate, how that goes. It was an unfortunate experience. Fortunately, it was taken care of right now. I mean, it was taken care of immediately. But ensuring the transparency and that every vote is counted in the process at town meeting is essential. And it really helps people feel confident that that their voices are heard and counted and the process is intact. So, I mean, it was an unfortunate experience, an unfortunate turn of events, but I do appreciate that there has been some response from the town moderator immediately. I just think some folks did walk away from that meeting thinking their votes didn't count, and that was an unfortunate moment for us.
Yes. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I echo Ms. Davis's comments. Certainly, some folks were very upset at the meeting's end, and the count was pretty ragged. I suggest, and I think the electronic voting's great, so we just, we didn't have enough counters for all the people that showed up. So when cards, I think part of the cards, it's very important that they're controlled. So if you have to count the number of cards you're handing out, and I thought the idea of segregating those folks in their own room was very good. That had to happen that way. But if you hand out 200 cards, you make sure you have 200 votes. Or if anybody says they abstain, but you account for every card and for every vote. Otherwise, it's a miasma. And I give us some room because we really couldn't have anticipated 1,375 voters. It was really, that's the second largest turnout in Chatham's history. And we had 1,100 clickers now. To think that we're going to have another 275 voters, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I would insist next time, if we need to go to a card system, they have to be numbered and controlled, because you have to know that you've counted all the votes, that are available to be counted. There were some very upset folks at the meeting's end, and there were some passions running pretty high, and I thought that got a little ragged, and it really wasn't a good scene for the town at the end of a very well-attended, interesting town meeting. I'll leave it there, but if we're going to go to cards, they've got to be controlled, because now we have great control over the electronic voting, and now if we need to go to cards, they've got to be controlled, just like you do the ballots at, the Oscars, if you will. It's that important. Or you go to an election system where you fill in a dot and they're counted.
Agreed.
You do that too. Thanks.
Dean, then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we had 1,375. I think it was the highest ever. The highest ever. And there were some decisions that had to be made on the spot. I mean, our chair, who was recused from the subject matter, was deputized to be a deputy moderator. But I think I want to just say I've spoken with the town moderator, and I have full confidence, and I suspect the rest of this board does, and I think most people in this town do, in the impartiality and the integrity of the town moderator, the deputy town moderators, and the town clerk's office. I think we're going to hear from the town moderator, and he's probably going to offer some suggestions about how we might improve the process for town meeting. I know that this was the second time we've used the clickers. I think they're terrific. It's also the second time where I know from where I was sitting, and I think that the same was true of Ms. Davis and Mr. Dykens, it was very difficult to hear. So we need to do something about the acoustics. I'd like to see perhaps additional screens that we talked about last time. And this is going to cost some money. And I know I will be fully supportive of including in the budgetary planning for FY 2025 whatever funds are needed. And we're going to have to plan for the town meeting and annual town meeting in FY 24 as well. But I will be fully supportive of whatever it is going to cost to achieve these enhancements. So those are my comments on the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Shreen.
One more thought on, just indulge me. When it came to the parking and the off-site stuff, we allowed different ways for folks to get to town meeting this year, and they came out, and it was a contentious issue, but people came out, and as far as town meetings is concerned, we should plan for larger crowds in the future, and we should bake in the off-site parking and shuttling for all our meetings. I also think having enough voting devices, not hoping to have enough, should be where we're at, and we should budget accordingly for all that for town meeting. I think it's really incredible to offer opportunity for people to get there in a way that is comfortable for them, and we just don't have enough parking there. So thanks.
Jeff.
Yeah, I couldn't reaffirm those comments enough. The shuttles were, I think, integral. They're absolutely necessary. And I think we can anticipate, greater turnout going forward. And I think we need to have enough clickers. I mean, 1,500, whatever we need to do. It's short money to rent them, I think. So it's better to have, my immortal words of one of my good friends, too much is always enough. So I really think we got to oversupply the meeting just in anticipation of a great turnout. And I absolutely echo, excuse the metaphor, the lack of our ability to hear on the dais, up on the platform. It just is very difficult to hear what people were saying. We need some kind of speaker system that comes at us, because I literally at times couldn't hear the moderator. And this is the second town meeting in a row that this has happened, and it's unacceptable. So we really do need to fix this, and anything we need in the budget, it's just unfair. It's unfair to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we bring up the moderator, I would like to think, we got to look at how we've done things traditionally and how things have worked when we've pivoted. Because last night, we pivoted and brought voters in, wrapped them down the hallway toward the cafeteria, up around the old shop, or whatever it is now. I don't know. Shop was when I was there. Miss Elliott's class, years ago. But the poor weather was a factor. And instead of queuing people outside, which if we had kept it traditional, would have been a miserable experience. But we pivoted, brought people inside. Maybe in the future we think of a drop-off point in the back. I don't know. But we take a look at what we've experienced and improve on it. We have lots of experience, and I think we can take note of what we've done and how to make things better moving forward. So.
I think, Corey, having the staff there to help voters who are having difficulty with their devices.
Staff, search.
Was critical.
Volunteers. We were very fortunate to have all those parties
Yeah,
involved.
and I want to thank the CERT and all the staff volunteers from last night.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm going to ask the moderator if you would indulge us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Litchfield. It was indeed the largest turnout. I think we had 1,395 voters. The previous high was 1,200 for the regional vote 13 years ago. I'm very pleased to hear you say that we will, I think, be purchasing more electronic devices. We had originally purchased 800. We purchased an additional, not we, I don't have the money, you have the money. An additional 200 were purchased for this meeting, anticipating that 1,000 might be enough, but as security, we rented an additional 100. It wasn't enough. And that is both the reason for some of the difficulties we had last night, but also a tremendous tribute to the voters of the town of Chatham. It was not a pleasant night to be out. And the fact that we had almost 1,400 people is, it's what, 25% of our voting population? It's extraordinary. The town of Yarmouth, as I've said many times, has 20,000 voters. They rarely get 100 people at their town meeting. We had 1,400 out of 5,500 voters, something like that number. So it was both a wonderful evening and an unfortunate one, and I apologize to the townspeople for the difficulty at the end. Every vote was counted. Unfortunately, as Corey said, I wasn't given the information as to some of the numbers coming in. The original vote as announced was 690 to 491, which is not 2/3. The final vote, which is in the town clerk's records, was 811 to 564, which is still not 2/3. There were several hundred people in the small gym. I was kind of busy, so I didn't get a chance to go in there. I had no idea whether there were 10 people in there or 500. So when I got the one slip, that's all the information I had. My job is to declare the vote publicly. I did not do it correctly, and I apologize. It was based on misinformation. These things happen, and we learn from our mistakes. But it's important for the voters to know that every single vote was counted. 1,375 votes were cast out of 1,395 people who attended, and some people had left and some people didn't vote. The moderator doesn't always vote. We will continue to strive to improve the processes. I think that having a better sound system is going to be very important. I know that the board has trouble hearing. I think we also have to consider other ways to make sure that people know their votes are counted. It takes a moment sometimes for the okay to show up. Fortunately, I don't think we had more than 2 or 3 people, or maybe 4 or 5, who had difficulty, and their difficulties were addressed, but we're going to continue to strive. One of the other communications problems was that at one point I had been told, and I announced, that the hand votes would be added to the electronic system for display. That was not correct. Meridia said, we can't do that. And that's a very good thing. That means that they can't change the numbers if they want to. If somebody from Meridia doesn't like what's going on, in theory, they could change the numbers. They can't. So it was impossible for them to input the numbers from the small gym. That speaks well for the technology and the safety and security of the system. So it was, and I don't talk about outcomes because I'm not interested in them. It was a good evening in the sense that the electronic voting system worked well. It was highly unfortunate that we had some communications problems that I don't think Mr. Metters, as deputy moderator, could hear me and I couldn't hear him. That was unfortunate, and I know that the technology is there to allow for better communications. And with your support, I suspect that the budgetary aspects can be addressed. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I do want to apologize to the voters for announcing an incorrect total. Didn't change the outcome, but every vote was recorded. I simply didn't have all of those numbers at the time.
All right. Questions or comments? I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Questions from the audience at the moment? Okay. Additional thoughts on the town meeting? Dean.
Well, I was, first of all, I was tremendously impressed with the turnout, and especially since it was a rainy day. And I thought that the discussion that was present, or that was presented by both sides, was very respectful. And I think it was a tribute to town democracy, that the voters had their say. On the subject of the Council on Aging and the Senior Center, I personally believe that continuing with the project of a new senior center should be terminated. That's my personal view. I'm not going to offer a motion on that tonight, but I think that we need to look at other opportunities. I think it was always a reach to place it at 1610 Main Street. That wasn't my original idea, and on a couple of occasions I more than suggested having it located somewhere else, but I'm not going to go over spilled milk. I did think ultimately that it was an ideal location for it, and that's why I supported it. I supported it both in 2021, and I supported it yesterday. And I'm disappointed that it was defeated, but it was defeated. And I think we have to go from there. I do think we should take a look at the current location at 193 Stony Hill Road, which it was never built to be a senior center, was never really built to be a municipal building at all, and is severely limited and restricted in terms of what you can do with it. And at the same time, we have a responsibility to conduct a council on aging and provide for the needs of the seniors in town, which are a significant part of the population and will continue to grow as such. And there are things that need to be done in that building to make it more serviceable. For example, it could use a new elevator. There's some work that needs to be done on the foundation. There are those terrible columns that I'm sure are weight-bearing that interfere with the ability to have even a meaningful program room. You have a meeting room for the board, which is pretty defective because, as someone pointed out, I think at the forum, if you sit at one end of the room, you're going to hit your head. Somebody's going to get hurt, so maybe that could be built out a little bit. But there are things that can be done, and I think it probably makes sense to consider engaging an engineer to come up with a plan to refurbish that building to make it more serviceable. And at the same time, I think that we should try to make more enhanced use of the community center for programming. I know that we're already doing that with senior programming, but maybe we can do more without building an addition to the community center, without major remodeling to the community center. And I think that's the way we have to go. I personally believe that pursuing a brand-new building at some other location isn't productive. And I think that should be left for a future generation of Chathamites. I know those are pretty direct words, but that's how I personally feel. And I've lived with this for 8 years. I'm a liaison to the Council on Aging. Somebody said we had 37 meetings. I think that was 37 meetings of this board and maybe one other board. But if you add in the Council on Aging, which meets monthly, and they've been at this for 8 years, that's a lot of meetings because they talk about this all the time. And the Finance Committee has met on this issue. So I personally think we've been through every conceivable place to put this. And I just don't think it's meritorious to waste more time and money and energy and instill further divisiveness in the community to pursue that dream. I don't think I'm going to offer anything tonight. I will reserve the opportunity for a future date to perhaps request an agenda item to consider some of the things I've been talking about. But I'm anxious to hear what others on this board and what the public have to say about the results from yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Shereen?
Thank you, Corey and Dean. I appreciate your comments. And to the public, I was amazed and awestruck by the amount of people that came out. Chatham should be proud of that fact that there were people, in 3 different rooms casting a vote for a very big project in town. It's evident by the majority of the people that were in the room that they did want a Center for Active Living. And it's up to us that we need to provide the services and a venue that the town's seniors deserve and that we can collectively be proud of. But I don't want to give any off-the-cuff statements about what we should or shouldn't do about a senior center tonight. What I'd like to do is pause, really just pause. We have an opportunity to look at our select board goals and objectives, very soon. And we can take a look in the future about what our next steps are. Because I think it's going to be all about how we get there, which will be important to the future of any Center for Active Living that we have in this community. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, there's no question I was disappointed in the vote, but I was amazed and frankly warmed by the turnout. I thought the turnout was incredible. So incredible, we weren't prepared for it, really the way we should have been prepared for it as responsible leaders of the town. Again, I was very disappointed in the vote, and the outcome of the vote. The outcome of the vote doesn't help the lolly columns in the basement that get in the way of any decent programming. The outcome of the vote doesn't help the rabbit warren of a library and offices on the 3rd floor that are a fire trap. The vote doesn't help the lack of privacy in offices, and the vote doesn't help the overall programming, exercise programming, meals, et cetera, that takes place at a substandard Council on Aging. So I am not ready to offer any projection of where I would stand on the model, the whereabouts, the monies, the shape, size, location of any future Council on Aging, but clearly this town has a responsibility to do something about that horrible building they're currently in. It is not acceptable that this town has a Council on Aging in that building. And we could dump millions into it probably and get rid of the lolly columns and patch up the foundation, but it's still not going to be up to the standard that this town deserves for its elderly. So I'm open to any and all. I'm going to listen very carefully to everybody. I appreciate Select Person Davis's comments about taking a pause, and we'll do that. But that vote doesn't take care of that senior center, let me tell you. That's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. This is a little bit of my opportunity to talk because I've had to recuse myself for a little bit of time. Now that the vote is all over with, this was not a new topic for us. We've talked about this a fair amount of times. And as my colleagues have known, and anyone who's been close to being in the conversation is, 1610 was a parcel that I liked way back when the Sibley family owned it, and I thought it was a viable option years back. And things have regressed, and we've had a couple town meetings on it. And, I was a supporter from the beginning. I recognize over this last year, with my conflict of interest, I had to step back a little bit. And I respect there's a lot of strong opinions in this community. And I think people stepped forward on last night's special town meeting, and the turnout was, what we hoped for. Well, whether you're for or against a topic, having the people step forward and vote at town meeting is the right process. Some people are happy with the outcome, some people are not happy with the outcome, but having people show up and express their right to vote is something that I'm, very appreciative of the small community. So I don't believe we should do anything at the moment. I think we need to decompress. We've put a lot of time, effort. There's a tremendous amount of time and effort by individuals, parties, staff, that have been put toward, our actions last night. At the very least, we're going to have to do some addressing to the current location. That's a given. So it's going to take a little bit of designing and engineering and funding, but at the very least, that's what we need to do. Anything beyond that, I think we need to take some time, and I think there's a lot of strong opinions of where things were not meant to be. Maybe over a little bit of time, if a Council for Active Living is meant, a new facility is meant to be, maybe there'll be some clarity in the future of where that location may or may not be. So at the moment, I think we pause, we sit back, we reflect on all that has happened, and not act too hastily. But I think for the time being, we take a pause and just reflect on what has happened. So,
Corey?
yes.
If you're finished.
Yeah, I'll go to you, and then I'm going to go to the public.
I think it's also important that we acknowledge and recognize the staff and the planners and the architects for their, good work and their diligence, professionalism, and courtesy towards the public. This was a long, it's been a long journey for everybody, in years, actually, of planning and studies and whatnot. So thank you very much.
Regular meetings, outreach
And
meetings.
to the town manager.
Everyone, the entire team. Jeff?
Yeah, I want to echo that. I forgot to mention that. I had it written down, but I thought Jill wrote a great note this morning to her staff, expressing her thanks. So I would echo that. It was a great note, and, everybody worked so hard. Many folks on the staff, et cetera. So, but anyway, thank you very much for all your hard work. Really appreciate it.
I want to open it up for comments with the audience in-house tonight right at the moment. Does anyone present like to speak? Yes, one and then two, please.
I'm Dave Mott. First off, I wanted to thank everyone for the turnout. I thought it was outstanding. I think the idea of having the shuttles was genius. I think it worked out very well. I sat amongst some people who actually used the service, and I thought it was great. So thank you all for that. I thought the clickers worked well. You talk about getting more clickers, but I thought there was some issue with the proximity of those clickers, that they might not be able to be used in another room. And I was wondering if there's any way that in the future there might be some enhancement that we can purchase, use, whatever it is, that expands the distance for those clickers?
I think if we move forward and get additional clickers, some of the logistics would be potentially to designate the main gymnasium and then the slim gym, which has a larger capacity versus the auditorium. This is where I say we break from traditional process, and then the auditorium maybe becomes that third spillover room for non-voters or whatever. That would potentially be a mechanism to have more capacity with two isolated venues to deal with the transmission of the electronic voters. So there's concepts that we would definitely be able to explore and potential solutions. So
Yeah, I
yes.
think the technology is
Yes.
changing probably even as we speak. So, you know, I think it's a good idea to keep our finger on the pulse of all that to see what enhancements we might be able to utilize in the future. Just a general comment. I know you guys were really busy last night. One of the things about the turnout last night was in looking around, there was still a pretty low percentage of those people under the age of 60. And I don't know what we can do, whether it's a scheduling issue, whether it's simply a motivational issue. I don't know what we can do, but I think it's imperative going forward, particularly if you're going to be looking at new sites, to get some fresh eyes and to get some fresh opinions from some of the younger people who are going to be using those services 15, 20 years from now. That's just my particular thought. Again, I want to thank everybody. I know it was contentious. For better or for worse, I, got thrown into the middle of all that, and I'd like to think that we all acted above board, and while we all didn't agree, and I know you folks are disappointed with the outcome. I can speak for myself. I'm more than willing to roll up my shirt sleeves and get involved in finding a solution going forward. I've already gotten a few comments that people think I hate old people. I don't. I am one. I am a senior, so I recognize that it was a hot button issue. But I don't want people to think that we're walking away and thinking, great, we don't have to deal with this anymore, let them eat cake, so to speak. That's not our intent. Our intent is to move forward and to find something that is workable, something that is fiscally responsible, and that's it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you.
I'm Peter Metz, and I'm a non-resident taxpayer. A hateful term, but anyway, that's the proper term, I guess. My home is just a couple blocks away from here on Indian Hill Road North. And for those of you, most of you know that from what I've said before, that we purchased a home here over 25 years ago, and we've come to love Chatham and really have a tremendous admiration for it. It was originally just an expedient purchase as a nice place to come for the summer. But we've come to love it, okay? And admire the town. Admire the town. It's extraordinarily well run. It has a very interested population. It's a fascinating place. It's a wonderful town. Last night was not a wonderful night. Last night was, in my way, a great disappointment. And if the Chronicle publishes my letter, you'll see that I think the town shot its seniors down and shot itself in the foot. But you have a chance, we have a chance to do better. Where I come from, or in my career at least, I've learned that you learn from your mistakes and you press on. And then sometimes, in fact, you can press on a lot farther. So I would urge you, as you try to make, I think this is an excellent town, it's a wonderful town, you try to make this whole process excellent in two categories. One, the election process needs to be excellent. So we had 25% turnout. Well, frankly, in a democracy, I know in American practice that's pretty good, but that's really not very good, okay? If we want this to be a democratic process, we should be striving for a lot. We should be striving maybe for 90% turnout. Now, that's going to take some new technology and some new pioneering and all the rest. You can't get 90% of the voters of this town into any space. So you're going to have to allow for some changes in voting procedures, early voting, remote voting, I'm not sure what. But why shouldn't the town of Chatham try to lead the way, just in the way that the town of Chatham has led the way in sewering the town, and the bold decisions you made, 10 years ago or so, to sewer the town ahead of almost every other community on the Cape? Let's do it on election processes. With respect to the senior center, it's really, I think, sad that Chatham can take better care of its seniors, and that's what I think was the tragedy of last night. So now is the time to resolve to do much better next time. So I understand the frustration of, God, we worked at this for so long, I quit. But don't quit. Please don't quit. Don't give up on your seniors. I'm not going to benefit from the senior center very much because I'm only here a third of the year. But you have a lot of seniors, and you want them to be well treated, and you want to take very good care of them, and you need a fully functioning, efficient, modern senior center. And Chatham deserves it. And if it's going to be an excellent and wonderful town, it deserves an excellent and wonderful senior center. And God knows it can afford it. So, and I just urge you to set those two goals. Strive for excellence in your election process. Try to get the turnout out to 50 or 80%. And strive for excellence in the next go-round on the senior center. I think it'll pay off. And I thank you all. I mean, I guess I would say one other thing. It's very heartening to see how well this town works and how participatory it is and how many people contribute to the excellence of the town. A volunteer board of select board, every town official was there last night. It's very impressive to see them all there helping with the election process, making democracy work. The fire chief is there. I didn't expect the fire chief to be there. I think that's absolutely wonderful. You should all congratulate yourselves that you have that kind of participation and willingness and desire on behalf of town employees at all levels. So the town did a good job, but this town needs to do an excellent job the next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional people in the audience? Maybe. Ann? Yep.
I think you did a great job last night, considering the unexpected number. But don't worry, I don't think that's going to happen again right away, because if you think of the thousands of dollars that were spent on ads, robocalls, emails, people really were alerted more than in past years about getting to the meeting. So if you really want a good attendance, which this gentleman was speaking of, more ads in the paper and things like that, it probably would bring higher attendance. But I think you all did a magnificent job of coordinating more people than you expected, and in terrible weather, and a lot of us seniors who don't move as fast as young people. And I think the only thing that would bring back the same kind of huge attendance was if you brought 1610 back, and I know that's not going to happen. I want to tell you that I've been going to the board at the COA meetings for more than a year. I've been meeting privately with people, talking about the community center, and I'm not going to go there now, and I understand, I think everybody needs a rest, but most of the people that were against 1610 really seriously would like to help and would like to find a solution. And they are not against getting a better building and a better situation and a more modernized situation for the senior center, which it's not the senior center, but to me it is the senior center. We have a center of active living. It's the community center, but we do have seniors, and they do deserve something. I think we all need a rest to think this out more carefully. Maybe better look at some of the feasibility studies that kind of got swooped over because people were focused on 1610, but we want to help. We are not opposed to a senior center. We want to help, and we'll do it when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. We have two hands online. Who's the first?
Yes, we have Elaine Gibbs first and Pat Burke after her.
Elaine, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My comments were actually for the part one of as to what occurred last night physically. And so I think that the objective should be, because of that glitch, I think the moderator said it best. It showed how well and how secure electronic voting is. So I think the mission should be to make sure that we have 100% electronic voting next time. And that would be simply to make sure if there aren't the necessary signals in the Slim Jim to make that happen and have enough clickers. I think it's well worth it. 100% everybody feels secure. My other comments relate to the conditions of the room last night. For all of you who couldn't hear anything, trust me, it was just as bad for the people in the audience. The sound system was terrible. Even, it wasn't just the volume, everything was muffled, and it was very, very difficult to hear. The lack of air conditioning, it was so oppressive, so hot. I'm surprised we didn't have some people passing out. So I don't know what we can do about that. My understanding is that there was a lack of exterior lighting and that a few people tripped on their way out of one of the exits. We've got to make sure that doesn't happen. Some people had reported they had seen it. But the biggest issue that I had was that there were leaks in the room in the gym, and there were puddles on the floor. That's obviously a liability issue. But more importantly, I think the fact that the district has known for a long time that that roof has to be replaced. And the longer you don't replace it, the more damage is done to the structure. And I think it's unsafe for children to be in a potentially compromised space. I mean, they shouldn't be in a room like that where there are leaks on the floor and puddles. So I would hope that those things are looked into and the district gets on doing those repairs that they said are long overdue. It needs a lot. And maybe they can put in air conditioning at the same time, because I think it's very uncomfortable. And if that's where our meetings are going to be, you know, we've got to upgrade that space to make it safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. And Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I did not speak last night because I felt I had said everything I had to say. I was disappointed in the vote, as were the members of my board, but, you know, we listened to what people had to say, and I can't thank all of you enough for the great job that you did. Mr. Litchfield did a tremendous job. I would also like to thank the Finance Committee for putting in the amount of work that they did for this process and developing an operating budget that was helpful when people were trying to determine what next steps to take. I do agree with the concept of taking a pause. I did feel that the process, the whole process, has become somewhat divisive in the town, and I would like to see us be able to repair that before we take any more steps towards moving forward. In another vein, I would like to reassure the gentleman who just spoke that we continue working very hard at the Chatham Center for Active Living to assist all seniors in whatever way we can. We have a tremendous staff there. We couldn't do it without Leah. We couldn't do it without Jess, Debbie Mayhew, and Marianne Miller. They are all great. And our newest addition, Anna Milan, is going to prove to be another exceptional hire for this group. So I just wanted to say thank you. And my board will sit and talk about this in October, but thank you to everyone who did such hard work for this. And, you know, at some point, we'll all sit down and figure out where to go next. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Pat. Final thoughts from the board before we move on? I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if I
please.
could just say, I did visit the Center for Active Living and met with staff this morning. And they're very resilient, they're very happy to help any resident that comes in, and they're all about services. So I just want to assure the community that there's no hard feelings. They've been there to provide the services that we need, and they're always going to be there, as well as our community services, the recreation side of it. So I just wanted to thank the staff for that. They've done a really great job, through the many months of review. I also want to thank Channel 18, who's now Channel TV, for the work that they did to really pivot. We did expect a high turnout, and certainly with so many people in a room, it makes it difficult for audio. We had some speakers in front. I don't know if you noticed it, but I think with just the amount of people in the room, it made it somewhat difficult for you to hear, and we'll certainly work on that too. And then, speaking out about our collaborative and supportive Team Chatham that we have, there was the police chief mopping the floors to make sure it wasn't slippery. You saw our fire chief. More importantly, you saw newer town employees who probably haven't been to a town meeting yet that were helping just to get people settled, seated, and also serving as counters too. So I appreciate that acknowledgement, and definitely we're all here together to help. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
You have Leah Lacrosse has her hand up too, Mr. Chair.
Leah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to just say, I want to reiterate everything that's been said, and a huge thank you to the Board of Selectmen, the board, and to Jill, our town manager, who was there first thing this morning. And I do want to assure everybody that the staff at the Center for Active Living, when they walked in this morning, it was with a smile on their face. What matters to them is the service and nothing else. And we're going to continue to do the great work and welcome every older adult into our building and serve them as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. All right. We're going to move on our agenda this evening. Item F2. Consider use of town roads annual turkey trot on November 23rd, 2023. I believe we have a Katie Wibby who's presenting.
Good evening. Nice to see you all again. Thanks for taking the time. You obviously have a very full agenda this evening. So I am Katie Wibby. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Lower Cape Outreach Council, who took over management of the Turkey Trot last year. We will be hosting it hopefully for the foreseeable future with your permission. So we are again asking your permission to use the roads Thanksgiving morning for the annual Chatham Turkey Trot 5K.
Questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Move to approve the use of town roads for the 19th Annual Turkey Trot to be held on Thursday, November 23rd, 2023 at 8 a.m.
Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a great
Thank you
night.
for your patience in joining us this evening.
Absolutely.
Next, consider Oktoberfest requests, sales on town property, outdoor display of goods, alcohol on town property, special one-day alcohol permit, one-day entertainment permit at Cape Gould Park on October 21st, 2023.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from 3 and 4.
All right? Good evening.
Boy, do we hope this goes as smoothly as the turkey trot. Wow. Anyway, I'm Barry Tesselets, and this is Kristen Muller, and today we're representing the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association and asking your blessing for a few changes to Oktoberfest this year.
Okay. Do you just want to highlight the specific changes that we've put in place, or you've put it forward?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, that's me, I guess. So last year, the Chamber and Merchants Association had asked for some space in the town hall parking lot because Oktoberfest has gotten to be quite a popular thing around here, which is great for our town and great for our merchants and all that, but we need space. And it was great, and the turnout was even bigger, and the response was wonderful. So we want to ask for a little bit more space in the town hall lot. We have met with the police department and the fire department to make sure that logistically what we were asking was feasible for both of them, and got fairly enthusiastic support from both entities on what we're asking for. The net result of the extra space in town hall that we're asking for is a matter of 8 parking spaces, but in terms of total real estate, it actually gives us a lot more space for pedestrian traffic, which would be very helpful to the event. So to offset the parking question that we know everybody's going to have, because parking is the second most contentious issue in this town besides the Center for Active Living. We are going to implement some shuttles to some of the exterior lots in town with permission from the schools or at Oyster Pond or wherever it becomes logistically best suited to have off-site parking, and then be running some shuttles to get people into the center of town, because we understand the nature of taking town parking spaces, and so we're making up for that elsewhere.
I think the other big change is we're asking for alcohol in the town lot as well.
Okay. Questions for the board?
I don't have any questions, unless I have a comment. I think shuttle's a great idea.
Thank you.
You've been on that kick for all the time I've
I've
been
been
on.
on that kick for decades. It's funny how they worked at town meeting too, huh? Anyway, I would like to make a few motions here.
Sure.
I move to grant permission for the outdoor sale of goods and sales on town property for the town office parking lot from 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And I'm forgetting the date here, and it doesn't say the date here.
Yeah, it's not on there.
1021.
1021.
On 10/21/2023. And I'm going to package them all, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Please.
I move to grant a special one-day liquor license to Kristen Muller and Barry DeSoleil on behalf of the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and the Merchants Association for Saturday, October 21st, 2023, from 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. for service at the Chatham Bars Avenue parking lot and the town offices parking lot, and to further approve the outdoor sale of goods and sales on town property and grant permission to possess, consume alcohol on town property as associated with this permit. I move to grant a one-day entertainment permit to Kristen Muller and Barry DeSoleil on behalf of the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchant Association for Saturday, October 22nd. 21st? 21st, 2023, from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Cape Cool Park Bandstand for live, outdoor, and amplified music.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? The only 2 cents I'm going to throw out there is maybe you just want to talk to DPW and try to get a couple additional trash receptacles, kind of like we do on July 4th.
That's all taken
Oh,
care
okay.
of.
Yeah, what is it, Millie, Miley?
Millie's, yeah, Graham
yeah.
Millie's on it.
Nope, that'd be great. Okay. Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good luck.
Thank you so much. We hope to see you
Yeah,
all
hope
there.
you see you there.
Consider a special one-day license for Emma Bell's Cafe on September 26, 2023. Mr. Coughlin.
Good evening, everyone. Shane Coughlin, Emma Bell's Cafe. I'm here to request a one-day beer and wine license. I had volunteered to host the thank you party for Taste of Chatham, which benefits Monomoy Community Services. So this is just a small party for the vendors and restaurants that participated back in the summer. If anyone has any questions, I'm here
Questions
to
or
answer.
comments? Dean.
I'm just going to offer the motion,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. I move to grant a one-day special permit for wine and malt beverages only for Tuesday, September 26, 2023, from 5 to 8 p.m., 69 Cole Road, Chatham, to Shane Coughlin as a representative of Emma Bell's Cafe.
And a second.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good luck.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Next, consider sales on town property, South Chatham Public Library sponsored Authors Night at the Community Center on October 1st, 2023. Carol, I believe you're online.
Yes, I am. I'm right here. Yes, thank you. Again, the South Chatham Public Library is doing their Authors Night. It will be October 1st, and our featured authors are Bernard Cornwell, Wendy Rowland, and Anne LeClaire. In the past, the the authors have sold their books at this particular event, and we're asking again that their books can be sold this time at the community center, and that would be October 1st from 3 to 5 p.m.
Questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant a special permit for the sale of goods on town property and the outdoor display and sale of goods at the Chatham Community Center on Sunday, October 1st, 2023, from 3 to 5 p.m. for the South Chatham Library-sponsored Authors' Night.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Next, Cape Public Health Collaborative Intermunicipal Agreement, IMA. We have our health agent, Judy Giorgio. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Metters. You have in your packet a description of the Regional Shared Public Health Services Public Health Excellence Grant. And I'm here with Katie O'Neill, who is from Barnstable County and is our program manager, project manager for this program. We're asking for support for an intermunicipal agreement for the Commonwealth of Mass Public Health Excellence Grant Program. This program is designed for towns to expand shared service agreements. The primary goal is to ensure public health standards in our communities and create data collection, reporting systems, increase capacity, and incentivizing for cross-jurisdictional sharing. Right now, our program is supported by the town of Bourne, Brewster, Chatham, Dennis, Eastham, Harwich, Mashpee, Orleans, Provincetown, Sandwich, Truro, and Wellfleet. So I'm going to turn this over to Katie. Again, she is she's her actual services program manager for Barnstable County. So you can fill us in, Katie, on the details of this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Judy. Good evening, everyone. I really appreciate your time this evening. I had prepared a really short PowerPoint presentation, but if you've already had copies, I'm happy to just answer questions on that. I know you have quite a hefty meeting this evening, and I want to respect your time.
Board's preference?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So Katie and Judith, I noticed that Falmouth, Barnstable, and Yarmouth are not participating. I was just wondering why.
Sure. So actually, Yarmouth and Barnstable, there was a misunderstanding on the original intent of the program. So I am working with both of those towns right now, and they're likely going to also be joining the collaborative. I just came on at the very end of June, and Falmouth is the next on my list to start working on.
Okay, thank you.
Dean.
Thank you. I think we all reviewed the materials, so I do appreciate the level of detail in them. But I did have a question. Maybe this is better directed at Judy. What particular service or program or staffing addition does Chatham expect to get out of this, or have we already gotten something out of it?
We won't get any staffing particular to Chatham. It would be a shared, there'll be shared inspectors for all the towns. We're also getting software and programs that we can all use so that all the towns are using the same type of software for inspections. There's also going to be a lot of training by Barnstable County that will be offered to all of us. There's also a requirement for certifications that the staffing is going to be required to have moving forward. So we won't be hiring anybody in particular, but there will always be someone available for us should we need them in the future.
I appreciate that. So this is basically an initiative to regionalize some of the support in the public health area, which is really critical, yes, especially given the whole COVID experience. I think we especially relied on the county health department as well as our own Board of Health. Mm-hmm. I did want to mention, for the benefit of the public, that I did have there were a couple of paragraphs in the agreement that I had wanted to have run by our town council, and he has done that today. And I'm very satisfied with what he had to say. They particularly related to paragraph 7, I'm sorry, section 7 was the 5th paragraph, had to do with, you know, whether an individual town would be on the hook financially if it didn't wish to contribute to a particular initiative that benefited an individual community. And he pointed out that we had the option at any time to pull out of the agreement. Not that I'm suggesting we would, but, and the other question, the other paragraph had to do with, it was the section 10 on indemnification and insurance, which he assured is pretty standard language. We did on page, so I'm satisfied with those. I assume that the chair and the town manager will include the town council's opinion in the minutes of this meeting for the benefit of the public. I did see something, just happened to catch it on page 7 of the agreement under the withdrawal paragraph, number 12, 1, 2, I think it's the 9th line up from the bottom. The third word, I think you mean and instead of any, but you can take a look at that with your, I believe this was drawn up by the county's law firm. Just happened to notice that.
So we actually worked with one of the state's attorneys, but I'll certainly look into that.
I'm not trying to be, pick nits here. I just, that has something, that's a substantive edit. But thank you very much. I'm fully supportive of this.
Okay. Shereen.
I'm enthusiastically supportive of this. I mean, having been part of the COVID task force that the county was part of, it just showed the strength in having, you know, a regional sort of effort. This is going to strengthen our towns and the efficiency of our services to the communities. So I'm going to make a motion, I guess.
Please.
I move that we vote to support and sign the Barnstable County Department of Health IMA.
Second. Second. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
A strong aye.
And a Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Next, consider the appointment of 2 alternate members of the Summer Residence Advisory Committee to full member status. There are 2 full member vacancies at the moment. Basically, Dean.
I just had a question.
Yes.
Do we know which of the 2 alternates that we're being asked to advance to regular status has the longer tenure? And Kathy can check.
Pulling that up right now.
Yeah, Kathy's pulling that up. Because there are different terms here.
Correct.
They're uncompleted terms, both of them. 3-year terms, that one expires in 2024, one expires in 2025.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Both Mr. Manderscheid and Mr. Garvey were appointed this year to
Okay.
their alternate positions. Ms. Lopercino is the one whose term ends on the 24th, and she is the one who tendered her resignation, so that position would be.
Were they appointed at the same time, or is
Yes.
it? Okay. So it really doesn't matter. Mr. Chairman, I'll just go alphabetically. I move to appoint, just Thomas Garvey, as a member to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second. Do you want to fill in the other blank? We'll do it.
Yeah, I move to appoint Ron Manersheet as a member to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee until June 30th, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye. Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metters says aye. All right.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if you would indulge that we take F8 and move it down underneath F10. I think it's kind of relevant more to the discussion post the review of boards, commissions, and committees. And rather than get into any explanation as to why I think it's relevant. If you could just indulge me. If you don't, if the board doesn't want to do that, I'm fine. I'll explain my rationale during the discussion.
I don't have a particular problem with that. Mr. Castro, was your item?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I was hoping that we could take action on it tonight, one way or the other.
Okay. No, we will move it after item 10. So, all right, with that being said, we will go down to the ratification of the town manager's designation of Dan Tobin as an interim tree warden for a period of 2 years or until such time as a successor is duly qualified or appointed. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you know, Dan Tobin was our long-serving Director of Parks and Recreation, but he also served as the town's tree warden. And since his retirement, and there's been some transition in DPW, we haven't had a tree warden, but had reviewed activities, in particular with the library project. I think it's called the Safety and Master Plan Project. And we need to have a tree hearing coming up soon. So Dan has agreed to serve as the interim tree warden until Tom Barr, who's our Deputy Director at DPW, becomes certified. And that process to be certified as a tree warden is contingent on the availability of courses that are offered. So it could take hopefully less than a year, but maybe up to 2 years. So when I consulted with town council, he suggested that the appointment serve for a period of 2 years or until a successor is duly qualified and appointed. It's really sort of a gray area, the appointing process and the appointing authority. Because of our charter, the town manager appoints the employees, the select board, as you know, appoints committee members. The tree warden wasn't necessarily included in the charter because those responsibilities and functions were held by a town employee. So he had suggested that the board ratify my appointment of Mr. Tobin as tree warden, and Mr. Tobin has accepted this assignment. I forgot to say that too. So, so I would appreciate if the board could vote to ratify the town manager's designation of Dan Tobin as the interim tree warden for a period of 2 years until such time a successor is duly qualified or appointed.
questions or comments?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman,
Yes.
I move that the board ratify the town manager's designation of Dan Tobin as the interim tree warden for a period of 2 years or until such time as a successor is duly qualified and appointed.
Your second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, next. Annual review of town boards, commissions, and committees by the Select Board. So I'm going to kind of kick this off a little bit. I mean, this is an annual action that the board does. We take a look at all boards and commissions, say everything's, dandy and we're fine or whatever. I just want to give us an opportunity to kind of identify any smaller or larger issues. I'm going to have focus on each of our individual ones. I am going to take the liberty, I know Select Board Member Shell has had to step away, so there's one of his committees that I was a former liaison to, I will bring up tonight, just to make sure we have a list of it. So my thought is, well, I'm going to have three items. So one, low level of lift is recruitment. Like, we have like the Independence Day Parade Committee. Great committee. Our membership is down to 3. They have a 5-member committee, 3 active members, 2 openings. So from my list of boards and committees, I want to try to work on doing some recruiting so we can maintain the tradition of the Independence Day Parade Committee. They have a great template put together for efforts and work, but they also need volunteers, and that work does start now. It's a lighter lift, but so from a low level, I'd like to kind of do more recruiting, and I'd like to work the Independence Day Parade Committee as one of those that we want to highlight amongst any others. The next committee I'd like to just kind of put on our list for further discussion and action is the Aunt Lydia's Cove. I am the liaison to that. It has been a committee that unfortunately has only met a few times over the last couple of years. I've traditionally been very supportive of having each of our already identified waterway committees active, separate, because there's always been an interest in enough people serving. For whatever reason, we're having more difficulties with getting the Cove Committee participating in regular meetings, posting minutes, et cetera. So I think we need to pull that aside, kind of maybe look at what we have in our waterway committees, whether the structure is something where we need to do a deeper dive into the current members, confirm their commitment, look to take that committee and add it to another committee, whatever action is necessary. But it's a committee that we need to have a little bit of further discussion on. We can go into more depth into, the relevance of the committee, the importance of where they should be acting. We have other waterway facilities that I think we need to look into who is the best oversight committee. So Aunt Lydia's Cove is one I want to add to the list of areas that we need further discussion on. The rest of my committees, I'm very confident in how they've been acting. I think their charge is very clear, and I'm very supportive of all the volunteers that have stepped forward and served. I'm going to step over to Mr. Shell's committees and only identify one, only because he's not here. I was the former liaison to the Economic Development Committee. Again, a committee that has met sparingly over the last couple of years for whatever reason. Personally, I think this committee is a very important committee. I think what I've taken back over the years is this is the committee that should be active, could be active, but the biggest hurdle that we put before them is some direction. So I would like to have another discussion about whether we support the Economic Committee moving forward, how to confirm the current membership statuses, fill any openings if we are going to move it forward, and then identify topics that we wish to have them engage in. But most importantly, have a kind of timetable of any topics that we present with them where an action is going to be reviewed, and it is not as open-ended as it has been. I think the one criticism from the past chair, or I believe he's the current chair, as far as I know, is that the committee would meet and present and discuss and analyze, but it never really had a kind of a follow-through element. And it was kind of, I don't think they felt really their work was truly being reflective and considered. So I would like to get the committee up and going again, recruit any memberships, but also just, again, identify a topic or topics with a kind of a timetable of what the expectations are on the topic or topics we present with them. So those are the things that I would like to add to the list. That's kind of the direction of this first review of our town committees and commissions, and I will open it up to the other members to make a comment. Start with Shereen.
Corey, I agree with you, but I think there's a process too. Because we're looking at, I'm looking at, I agree with you on the Aunt Lydia's Cove and the economic development as well. I think we need to redefine our waterways membership, but also community partnership in light of the housing trust. I think we need to redefine what their mission should be at this point, or how they're functioning with this. One of the things that I think would be best to do is we don't have our goals and objectives in place right now as a select board, and I think we need to be there in order to define them. But what I'd like to see happen is that we're talking about other things that are impacting us is staff workload in relationship to the committees. Recruitment is key, of course. The liaisons, what our liaison jobs are and what those jobs look like, including what that would look like for a housing trust. And also that we're giving a lot of thought to this in relationship with the goals and objectives. So my thought was that this is a great kickoff to do this, but why not we, and I know that Dean might roll his eyes a little bit, but do a working group, like a select board working session where we're sitting and we have, a couple of hours of simply working on our committees, just looking at them, say, what do we need to do with this committee? What are the thoughts on this? And, maybe this is after our goals and objective meeting that we have, because things are going to shift and change. Maybe there's more priorities that need to go towards, housing, environment, and this and that, and maybe not that. But as far as when it comes to what we're being considered later on down the road here, we're defined as policymakers in this town, and and I just want to make sure that we stay that, and we have, this sort of, between the finance committee and us, this sort of like more defined thing, what this liaison possibility could be with our, with the next agenda item, which, I'll have some thoughts on that. But I wanted to put this up first just because I thought it was a more overarching discussion. Not that I agree or disagree on what the next steps are, on decisions being made on the next agenda item, but I just thought that this was sort of setting more of a tone before we got into that, if that makes sense.
All right, fair enough. Dean?
Well, I wouldn't object to a working group, but I think we shouldn't put all 49 committees in front of the working group. I think we should specifically identify which committees we want to look at so that that group we as a group can take a look at that. I did want to say, with respect to, I reviewed these. This is what, the 7th or 8th time that I've done it, and we've all done it multiple times. With respect to the Council on Aging, which is in here, that board met on Monday, yesterday, and they considered the request that we sent to them about whether they wanted us to increase the size of their committee. And they have undertaken some discussion of that, but that's still under consideration before that board, so they don't have a recommendation to us, so I don't know what to say about that. One overarching thing I noticed in almost every single committee, and I appreciate Kathy providing the information, there is poor compliance with ethics training, which is bad, because it's a statutory requirement. And I know that whenever we make reappointments, we get that information, and Corey, you have been very good about telling people when they're being interviewed, reminding them that they need to take the ethics test. But apparently it's not happening, so I'd like to see some sort of initiative coming from, I know the staff is overburdened, from the town manager's office and the town clerk's office as to what we can do to get compliance up, because it's not good. As far as the Affordable Housing Trust issue, do you want me to talk about that now? Shireen has sort of introduced to it. Let me explain what that's about, and we can decide whether we want to consider it for action or not. I had a request from a communication from Stephen Daniel, the current chair of the Finance Committee, who indicated he had applied for membership in the trust. And I advised him that there could be a potential issue because of the town bylaw that bars members of the Finance Committee from serving on in other offices of the town. That's what the charter, that's what the bylaw says. And it's a bylaw that I supported for years, because I was on the Finance Committee. I like the independent role of the Finance Committee. And I suggest that he speak with the town moderator and perhaps get an opinion from town council. So he contacted me again and asked me if I would be willing to request an opinion from town council, which I did through Joe. And town council responded, not surprisingly, that there was a conflict and that he would be barred under the bylaw. Town council did suggest that in his mind, because of Mr. Daniel's particular experience and expertise, that it would be possible for the Finance Committee to designate him as a representative to the Affordable Housing Trust, or use the term liaison. I thought that was an interesting idea. I thought if that were to be the case, it should be focused not on any particular individual, but on the position of the chair of the Finance Committee. And the reason I thought that is this Affordable Housing Trust is a body to which this select board has yielded up considerable authority with the approval of town meeting, because we wanted to have a body that specially focused on housing issues more than we can. We have 2 select board members on it. The rest are basically public members. We are going to have someone there has to be someone from the Housing Partnership, which I think is good. And we have some applications. We've already started interviews. We're going to be interviewing some people next week. But it's a body that's going to have a lot of say, admittedly in a very defined area, and control over the funds. And I thought, and maybe I'm reflecting my background as having served on the Finance Committee, it would be a good thing to have someone from the Finance Committee interact with the committee, or at least monitor what the committee does, what the trust does, and be available to the trust if the trust so needs. Now, the Finance Committee could, on its own initiative, just designate somebody to be their representative or their liaison, whatever they might want to call it. I thought having the select board request that of the Finance Committee gives it a stamp of endorsement. So that was my thinking. And I recognize that the trustees can do whatever they want. And if somebody from the Finance Committee shows up, just as if someone from the general public shows up, they have to listen to them. It's a public body, and except when they're in executive session. But they don't have to do anything that they say. In the case of the current chair of the Finance Committee, and Stephen submitted his resume to me, and I asked that it be disseminated because he does have some background in housing, and he has a demonstrated interest in it. They had a special subcommittee that looked at it. So I drafted the language of my suggested vote, and I sent it to town council and to town moderator, and you all saw that they thought, it was okay. So I'll leave it at that. I won't press for any vote tonight. If you want to mull this over and have a working group or whatever you want to do. If you want to reject it out of hand, tell me, and I won't bring it forward at all. I'm not. I don't mean to muck up or interfere with the work of this body, but another set of eyes to me doesn't hurt in terms of an institutional check from the town. That's all.
Great.
I appreciate all that, and what I would do is, I appreciate that you'd want to hold off, and maybe we'd have a more substantial conversation during our working group, because I feel like, yes, there is a particular talent that this particular chair has, and he's a wonderful advocate of affordable and attainable housing in this town. He's done a lot of good work in his career on that. Take that out of the picture, though, because now we're looking at the body as the Finance Committee, and they will be able to review everything. They have that opportunity to. They have the opportunity to come into any of our meetings and sit down and do that kind of review. And so I was looking at this as that bigger picture. All of a sudden, are we going to have finance liaisons to every single committee, and all of a sudden they're part of the policy-making side of our work that we do? That's what I'm fearful of starting to set a precedent about. I know that we have OPEB, and that's a very good place for a finance committee person to be in that capacity. So I'm just being cautious here of a bigger picture that could start to happen along the way. We are the policymakers of this town, and the Finance Committee's job is to review and accept the budget of the town. And they have done work outside of that. on some of it on their own accord. And it's been helpful at times, but at times, I'm not sure that it was, well, I'm just gonna put it that way. Let's just say that I'd like to step back a minute and take a little more deliberate process on our committees and what we're looking at. And I do agree that with you, Dean, that we shouldn't just say we're gonna look at 49, but pick out, maybe make a recommendation to the chair, each one of us, about which committees that we have or we think, or send it to Kathy, about which committees we think are the most important that we need to address issues with. But on the other hand, I think what we have to also get out of Jill is workload issues. What you're seeing, this is your process too, because this is the staff, and workload and what's happening with some of the more heavy hitting committees, and what that's doing to, you know, I'd love to think that the 49 committees here have, you know, a staff person at their right, but when you're meeting once a month or twice a month or something, I can't imagine what the add-on that is for each individual department, and they're not really big departments. And so I'd like to, let's just see if we can look at that bigger picture and do a little more streamlining and defining better. The compliance stuff, I'm just blown away that, you know, to pick that up, that isn't something. Do we have to say if you'd not complied or showed up to a meeting, do we have to set a different policy about this so that we can, if we have problems with our committee members, be more defined that you must attend at least X number? I mean, these are all things we can work out in a more defined workshop dedicated to this, where we're sitting around a round table looking at each other and throwing, you know, things together. I'm pretty sure that we can come up with a very defined agenda and do this within a couple of hours, or at least have, you know, enough homework to go back and then come back to this meeting and define it that way.
That's fine.
Does that make sense?
Core.
Jeff?
Yeah, Dean, to your request, I think, to be honest with you, it's a little precipitous. I do think it's deserving of more discussion rather than this evening, especially with Mr. Shell not being here. I think it's worthy of some discussion at another meeting, as Ms. Davis just described. So I would support that. I'm fearful of codifying a liaison or a role that we can get without codification. Because as I understand the new trust, if you have interest but no bandwidth, you can still go to meetings, for example, myself, and be interested in the workings of the trust. So I have interest, but I just don't have the bandwidth to commit to it. So that's why I didn't enter my name. So but I think it's a little early to have this discussion when, number one, we haven't even made we haven't appointed it yet. Yet we're now going to appoint or support it's having a liaison of the Finance Committee. That's, I guess, my first 2 points. My third point is codifying or eroding the road to independence between Select Board, Finance Committee, et cetera. So I think we can buy the expertise without the codification is what I'm trying to say. Thank you. But I'm certainly willing to discuss it again, and I don't think, if you feel strongly, bring it up. And one other thing, every single one that you mentioned, Corey, I'd be in favor of on that agenda. Ladies Cove has been not a problem, but they have difficulty meeting. We've talked about a couple of different times in the past rolling up the waterways committees. I think there's some logic to that, and how far we get with it, I don't know. Take a little issue with the Economic Development Committee. I know that perhaps we haven't acted exactly upon the recommendations, but they were folded into the 365, and we acted on a lot of the recommendations that both the Economic Development Committee had and that went into 365. So I take a little bit of issue there, and I enjoy him immensely. I enjoy the chair immensely, and would like to see him more involved in a revitalized Economic Development Committee, because I really do think they could add value and he could add value. Thanks.
That's fair. Dean?
Yes, that's a very accurate point, Jeff. I'm perfectly comfortable with, and I understand your arguments about independence of the finance, because I've had this conversation with the chair of the Finance Committee, right? I think the moderator feels a little differently. As you can see, he may be proposing a bylaw to allow Finance Committee members to be considered for other presence on certain other committees. But so I'm perfectly comfortable if you want to defer the conversation and include it in the workshop. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so
I
general
suspect I
consensus,
know
we're
where
gonna
that's
we're
going
gonna have a
to go.
workshop. In the interim, if there's any other boards or committees that we want to kind of add to the bulk of the conversation,
Yeah.
communicate through me or Kathy or, whomever, and then we will schedule that probably, relatively soon.
Could I just make one other broader comment?
Yes.
49 committees is too many committees. It's too many committees.
Well, some are not really active too.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain boards we have to have, they're statutory. But the Waterways is a good example, we've talked about that, Shireen has talked about that. You mentioned Lydia's Cove. When I first heard we had an Lydia's Cove committee, I asked a former select board member, why do we have a special committee for that particular location? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense for me. I'm sure there is historical reasons, but we should be looking at consolidating and getting the number down, and that would be a lesser burden on the staff eventually. I don't know what we do about getting ethics compliance, but we have to do it. And the burden has been put on the staff in the past to remind the committee chairs and the committee members, and they just don't take the exam. I know that the town clerk has historically sent out a long email about who was in compliance and who was not. I haven't seen that in a while.
We have done that until the state has now consolidated databases, so it's very much a self-service option for people to take the training. But what I'm thinking of doing, just like what we do when we have appointment letters for town employees, we lay out the conditions for the appointment, and one of the conditions are, or compliance with the state ethics law. So I'm thinking maybe, Kathy, we can add that link to the letter when we make the appointments moving
Yeah,
forward.
we may have to take the position. You don't get reappointed unless you're going to take that exam.
Or maybe maybe you take the position that before you get sworn in, you need to take that exam and show compliancy at that time. And that sets the tone for the next time they have to.
Because some people may not get themselves sworn in, they just continue.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, those are my comments. I'm fine with what you want to do.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
just take this another step, and maybe we can talk about it when we do the working session, is that I really think that we could do just a more robust onboarding of new committee members, and maybe with indulgence of the chair, meet with the other chairs of the boards and commissions just to check in on them to see how they're doing, reiterate the ethics, compliance, talk about setting the agenda materials. So many people participate or watch the meetings when there's discussion about something that's being handed out on the table. And we found this with the Summer Residence Advisory Committee too. It made it somewhat difficult for people to follow remotely. So maybe we can just get back to basics, Corey and myself, and maybe have the staff liaison present too, or if there's a select board liaison or all four of us, to really just, it's a big responsibility, but we also want to recruit more participants and be more inclusive. And so maybe having not so much of a job description, but laying out the benefits of why someone should volunteer and how to align their interests along with the select board goals and objectives. I mean, for my discussions with the departments, that's the top level for us, is to carry out your goals and objectives. And so many committees are very enthusiastic about what they do, but a lot of the times it's not necessarily, in that same, on that same path or that same lane. So again, nothing controversial, but I think we just need to have that discussion.
Good. All right. Town manager report, August 2023.
Thank you. I know this is the last item on tonight's long agenda. So it is included in the packet. The first part of it, as you can see, is pretty heavy on the special town meeting because we do post these reports on Friday. So I was hoping to do a last-ditch effort, which seemed to work, not us alone, certainly. And then we have our employee years of service anniversary. I just wanted to note October coming up. We have Jeff Phillips, our police officer for 15 years, Aaron, our police dispatcher of 14 years, Nick Ruggiero is our firefighter, 13 years, Cheryl Sergian, who you don't see that often, but she's working very hard as our assistant town accountant, assistant finance director. We have Ardell Kelly, Dale as our assisting director for 8 years. Cheryl's been here for 11 years. Our own Katie Donovan has been the director of community development with the town for 7 years, currently doing a stint as the interim director of natural resources. Megan, who's our human resources and benefits administrator, has been here 3 years already. And then Charlie Chaparales, our police officer, has been here 1 year. And Charlie he was a lateral transfer and has been very involved with the community. So all of these employees do a really great job, and I'm really happy to note the longevity. And then the newest member to the team is Anna Milan. She is the Community Services Council on Aging Program and Communications Coordinator. She was a former dispatcher with the town of Brewster most recently, but has a really great background, really great connection to the Cape, soon to be a Chatham resident. And I just saw her today. She is just so excited with everything she does, and certainly will partner with Shauna in communications, as well as Ryan and our Chatham TV for spotlighting various functions of the department and getting the message out to all residents. So the report is similar to what you've seen before, with recruitment for our job postings and coming soon, as well as how to keep connected. And then following this report is the monthly reports for the departments. You're very gracious in recognizing the hard work that the departments put into the report, and they appreciate that too. And we're trying to do some things fun, or maybe pull some trivia out of that to work into some spotlights as well. So happy to answer any questions.
Just a really good report every time, and we just appreciate it, Jill. It's more informative, and as we've always said, I think if the general public got their hands and really read this, they'd get a very good understanding of what the town is doing for the community. So thank you.
As always, Jill, great report. I just have to ask, how's the recruiting going for those notable vacancies?
We have good candidates. I don't have anything to report yet, but I hope to soon.
So we're getting good candidates.
Yes.
Good, thanks.
Well, thank you very much for the report. One area I got a little chuckle out of, and I probably shouldn't say it in that manner, but we always joke we have a parking problem in this community. We had 1,354 violations, totaling a fine total of $67,700 for a variety of infractions. So, revenue source, it looks like.
Could be. Don't get me going, Corey.
Good fun to shuttle. That shuttle would probably solve some of the parking violations. So anyway, with all said and done, thank you very much for a very long evening. I will entertain one last motion to this night, and that is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Don't be so quick, everybody. All those in favor, Select Board Member Nicastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.